Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Tuesday, March 17th. Thank you all for being here. The day after NVIDIA's GTC, officially the day after NVIDIA's GTC, we have so much to talk about in terms of what happened at GTC and, quite frankly, the lack of market reaction to GTC. There was a little bit of market reaction. And then there was a market reaction. It was, quite frankly, a very funny $300 billion spike in market cap for NVIDIA that faded within seconds. But we'll talk about why that happened, what Jensen said, all the different announcements, and we will keep going from there. We got a bunch of different macro updates. We have some jobs data today that we'll look at. It is Tuesday, and so we will get into a bunch of the private ADP data, which is good, not great, but it's definitely stuff that still matters when it comes to discussing kind of how the jobs data is playing out and how the market's ultimately going to interpret it. And outside of that, we have a couple of earnings this week that still matter. Micron is tomorrow, not today. Micron was actually at GTC at NVIDIA, and there's a bunch of different things they announced here. So I think that'll be interesting before we get into the earnings officially. S&P is at 670. The theme of the day that I think is really important for all of us to hopefully see is, can we get 2 green days in a row? If we actually go green today, which would be above 669.03. If we even hit 669.04 by the end of the day, that is 2 green days in a row. This is the first time that has happened since end of January, early February. I know it's hard to believe, but we literally have not had 2 green finishes in a row in about a month. And, you know, we're not really at the end of March, but we're getting close to the end of March. So if we don't have it in March, you know, it just begs the question, when is that going to happen for us to be even, you know, get a trend? And so that's what I want to see. Amazon right here up a little bit in the pre-markets. Robinhood's up a little bit. S&P is up 0.25%. NVIDIA's announcements, I think, were bullish enough to get us that second green day in a row. But if they weren't, and we'll talk about some of the good and the bad of what they announced or how it was perceived, what they announced, you know, maybe we don't get that second green day. It is kind of crazy that the world's largest company announces some major, like, industry-leading announcements and the market kind of fades. It goes to show how skeptical the market still is of not just the AI story, but NVIDIA's story in particular. At the end of the day, they are almost a $5 trillion company. They just need to say things that are really strong to get them to beat expectations. And I think they did, but I also think they didn't yesterday. And as a result, the market is not having that massive reaction. NVIDIA spiked up to 188 pre-markets. Now it's at 184.22. Could it get back there? Yes, obviously. I think most of us think it's undervalued even at these levels, but that immediate reaction not being there definitely is worth analyzing. And we'll kind of talk about how the market is ultimately thinking about it. Meta right there is flat in the pre-market. SoFi's up a little bit. Shopify's up a little bit. Most stocks are either slightly green to flat. You don't have a ton of red in the pre-market. And we're going to see as we get through these headlines if some of that flat can turn into a little bit more green, which is going to be exciting to see. So let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Good morning. Amit, you look tired. I am definitely tired. Yesterday was like 12 hours of walking and standing on my feet and going around places. But that's what happens when you come to these events, right? You come for the excitement and joy of being part of everything. And this is another 3 days we have left. So this is an entire week at GTC. It's the first time I've been to an event with like that many. You know what it reminds me of? We're in a hotel and, you know, there's like different things happening in different rooms. And when I did debate in high school, we would have debate tournaments, and some of those rounds that I had with other kids were in different rooms in a hotel. So it kind of feels like I'm back at a debate tournament. It's just like the adult version of it because now you're talking about business and stuff. So yeah, we're here. We're grinding. We got some good interviews. NVIDIA built this awesome podcast studio. Like every company that wants to do financial creator stuff, look at this thing, bro. They legit built like a Joe Rogan podcast studio in one of the hotel rooms. And I got to interview the director of healthcare yesterday, which was super cool. It was super cool. This guy was awesome, Rory. And I got that interview within 5 seconds. By the way, this whole SanDisk thing, they gave me the interview, 8 gigabytes on a SanDisk hard drive. I transferred it to my Mac in 5 seconds. That's when I was like, oh, that's why this is a $700. I was like, 5 seconds to transfer 8 gigabytes? And that would take like at least 20 minutes. And yeah, now I get why SanDisk is going to the moon and probably will go higher when Micron reports on Wednesday. So yeah, overall, I'm tired, but very excited to be here. And we will keep seeing what we got to do. Danny says I got the gold card. Okay, congrats. You know, a lot of people have been now talking shit about the platinum card, and I can't even blame them because when you look at all the fine print, the platinum card is not that exciting. But the gold card and that 3% cashback is exciting. So I think a lot of people are sticking with the 3% cashback, which is still Very good for Oppenheimer. Also, yes, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. It is March 17th, so happy St. Patrick's Day for all those who celebrate. I need to be in Ireland one day on St. Patrick's Day, you know, so I could go to Dublin, so that I could, you know, I'm not going to make the joke because, you know, I'm too old to be making the joke. But if I could be doubling my money in Dublin on St. Patty's Day, that would not be the worst thing in the world. All right, let's get into it. Good morning, good morning, morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let's start off with NVIDIA and what happened at GTC. So first of all, real quick, I see a lot of people talking about it in the chat. Yes, Nebius did do an offering, and they diluted. That's why the stock is down 6%. I think this is inevitable. If you are an investor in any of the neo clouds, it should not be that surprising at the end of the day for them to be able to finance all of the deals they're getting. Yesterday, you know, really big deal, $27 billion of CapEx. In order for them to finance that, they're going to need to launch equity raises and or convertible notes to be able to do it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about this if you're a Nebius investor. This is just part of the territory. If you believe in that long-term ecosystem of what Nebius is building, then or CoreWeave or Iran, right? Like they're going to have to finance this stuff. So 3.75 billion of senior convertible notes. The interesting thing about this is, again, this is not dilution today for Nebius. This is going to be dilution in the future if the company executes. So as the company continues to execute and they do well, then the shares will, or the shares will convert at the price that it converts at in the future. And it's 3.75 billion in total. The specifics on this, I think, are 2.1 billion today, not literally today, but in the short term. And then let me get the exact number. 2 billion due 2031, 1.75 billion due 2033. And then there's an over allotment option of 560 million. So again, the neoclouds and the structure of the neoclouds is very simple. They are going to get massive amounts of backlog and revenue. I think Nebius has now $44 billion in backlog revenue they can achieve, and CoreWeave has $67 billion. In order to do that, they need to either take on debt, they need to issue equity, and they need to be able to raise capital to be able to finance the CapEx. Because again, Meta, Microsoft, they're paying these smaller neoclouds to be able to build out these data centers for them. To build out those data centers, you obviously need to buy land, you need to buy infrastructure, and you most importantly need to buy the GPUs. And I think Iran, out of all the neoclouds, has the most capacity. I think it's like 1.4 gigawatts of capacity in total, which is why they are also seen as one of the very strong neoclouds. So look, I wonder if the market ignores the dilution and doesn't care too much. Stock's down 6%, stock's up like 40% in the past week. So it's really just the cost of doing business. But if the market does ignore it, I think that's super bullish for Nebius, because that just means that the market doesn't care about dilution. If the market doesn't ignore it and the stock ends up going down, then the stock ends up going down. This is just part of the game. And long term, if you think the stock and the company will be able to produce more of these deals, then dilution is just going to be an inevitable part of the ecosystem. They did get a ton of upgrades yesterday after that Meta deal. So I think the average price target now is around 175. And I don't think dilution necessarily changes the thesis. So that's what you have on Nebius. NVIDIA, 184.33 right here in the pre-market. Let's talk about everything that happened with NVIDIA. So I think let's talk about the first headline that came out yesterday, which honestly, this is the only headline. So first of all, let me say this at a high level. The NVIDIA event, we don't have the price for the Nebius dilution. It's probably going to be in the future. If the stock goes up, then, if they execute, then it'll convert at that price. But it'll likely be a premium to the price of today, which is why they're even getting the ability to, issue the shares in the first place. Yes, also, shout out to MC. I was just using his tweet. There it is. Manuela, thank you for being here, sir. Nebius also did partner with CrowdStrike. That is also something that happened today as well. I don't know if the market's going to care that much about this versus the dilution today, because at the end of the day, dilution might be a little bit more important, but they did partner with CrowdStrike. So again, if you care about the neoclouds, I know we've been talking about them a lot for the past couple of weeks. Nebius has had a massive run. Dilution is not that big of a deal, but it is something you have to be part of. It's something you have to be prepared for if you're going to invest in these stories. And, you're going to get some really good headlines like Nebius partnering with CrowdStrike and building new classes of AI cloud platforms. But in order to do that and finance all the stuff they're doing, they're going to have to raise money. And not all dilution is horrible dilution, but it also is an inevitable part of investing in the neoclouds, which is something that should be remembered. Okay, having said that, let's talk about NVIDIA. Amit, where's the Chicago link? All right, every time I try to talk about NVIDIA, I see another comment. Let me put this in the chat real quick because we do have the Chicago link. I will put it again later. I'll just pin this right here. Chicago link is live. The tickets are $100. The Eventbrite is charging us a higher fee because Chicago apparently has some law that if you have events in Chicago, you have to pay a 9% fee on every ticket you sell. I don't know why Chicago has that fee, but it does. So the tickets are not actually 120, but with taxes and the Chicago fee, it becomes 120. But I'm pinning that in the chat. There's the Chicago link, May 9th. We tried to keep it at 100, but Chicago has weird laws, so it's 120. All right, so NVIDIA. This is the big announcement that Jensen said yesterday, and this is the thing that got everyone excited, and it got me excited, but after looking at it, it's not as exciting as people think. So Jensen says, last year I said we see 500 billion worth of demand coming over the next few quarters. Now I see that number at minimum is 1 trillion. So when he said this was really important because the market got super excited. And the reason the market got super excited, obviously, is because Jensen just said, no, instead of doing, 500 billion, I'm going to do 1 trillion. The problem, if you look at the fine print, and this is why I think the market got faded as hard as it did, which is that it's through 2025 to 2027, not 2025 to 2026. So the initial $500 billion comment from Jensen at GTC was for 5 quarters. So, a year, less than a year and a half, market loves it because that's a lot of revenue per quarter. Now, if you look at underneath that $1 trillion number, which is probably going to be more than 1 trillion, but the point is, Jensen officially raised the guidance to 1 trillion. They're saying 2025 to 2027, which is kind of 2.5 years of ultimate demand that they see where they're projecting for that 1 trillion. And when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, you start to think, well, wait a second, what were the whisper numbers? And the whisper numbers, guys, were actually above 1 trillion. Now, the FactSet data was 978 billion. So if you look at the FactSet data versus the Jensen $1 trillion number, yes, that's a beat, but it's a beat by, 22 billion. That's not that crazy. But if you look at the whisper numbers, which is what Jensen gets held against in terms of, the expectations, it's a lot more. And so as a result, some analysts said this is a guide down, which I think they're trying to be slightly conservative here because they're not trying to literally, say they're going to find $2 trillion of revenue. But this moment was super exciting. I mean, the entire room went crazy. The stock went up. It just wasn't, when you look at the fine print, exactly. I mean, initially, and I think a lot of people agree with me, people thought it was $1 trillion in 2027. Because if they were doing $1 trillion in revenue in 2027 and the company's worth $4.5 trillion, they're trying to get 3 times sales. That's like, okay, I think like everyone and their mother would be buying this stock. It would be $230 today. That's just not what they said. And like, if they did say that, there is no institution on the planet that would not be buying NVIDIA if they said they were going to do $1 trillion of revenue trading at $4 trillion of market cap. But they're talking about over 2.5 years, which is the difference. And that's why I think the street, potentially faded the move.
Tell you that right now where I stand, a few short months after GTC DC, 1 year after last GTC, right here where I stand, I see through 2027 at least $1 trillion.
Notice he didn't say in 27. He said through 2027. And I know people are confused about this. Trust me, I was confused as well, okay? Because we saw that stock go up and we got really excited and we were like, oh, this is a big deal. And then we saw it fade down. And so I looked at some of the sell side today, and the sell side, Cantor Fitzgerald, they have a price target of 300. And they said lots of new announcements across hardware and software offerings, but key investor focus thus far is the company's financial update, where Jensen highlighted 1 trillion in Blackwell Rubin bookings through calendar year 2027. While the market may be a bit disappointed with this starting point, this is what the sell side is saying, versus consensus estimate of 1 trillion in data center revenues from calendar 2025 to 2027. We believe the read here may be a bit misunderstood and most likely supports EPS tracking to $15 in calendar year 2027. So even Cantor Fitzgerald on the sell side is like, yeah, consensus already agreed for $1 trillion in data center revenues. Now, I know Jensen said at least, so it's probably going to be more than $1 trillion, but again, he's explicitly not saying $1 trillion inside of 2027, which is what I think the market and the algorithms thought immediately when it spiked up to 188. He is saying through 2027. That's a really big difference because that goes back to the consensus estimate of, oh, we expected you to get $1 trillion. But Cantor's bullish because they said EPS is likely still going to be $15 by calendar year 2027. If you put a 30 multiple on 15, you get what, 450, right? So I mean, their price target is like, I think 12 on 30, 360, and they have a $300 price target. So if you put a relatively reasonable price to earnings on $15, you're still gonna get $300, and it's a great return from here. but it's not $1 trillion inside of 2027. So as a result, that is $1 trillion from now through 2027. No, not mid 2025. Well, that goes against the picture that Jensen posted. The picture Jensen posted said 2025 to 2027. And so, look, if this was really $1 trillion in a year, this stock would be up like 30% today, no matter how big it is. It's just not. It's not. And I wish it was. I really wish it was. That would be very exciting, but it's just not. And so, unfortunately, because it's not, it is what it is, and we have to just deal with that. It's not unimpressive to say. It's just at this scale, NVIDIA really has to put up some crazy numbers to get the market to be more excited. Now, granted, they shouldn't have to based on the earnings they just had, and you would think that would still be enough to get the market to at least recognize some of the value, but you're just not seeing that right now. So overall, I would say about the keynote itself, the only thing that was new in the keynote, and I'm saying this as someone who's watched many of these keynotes. I know a lot of you guys have watched many of these keynotes. A lot of you guys were in the chat with Tanner. I ended up getting into the chat because I was a little bored during the keynote and I started talking with all you guys. Also, NVIDIA ended up taking down his stream, which kind of sucked, and they apologized for it. But yeah, they pulled an Apple yesterday by taking down Tanner's stream. But I'm not going to lie, the event was kind of boring. Like, just to call spade a spade, the event was kind of boring. And there was a lot of people that were sitting next to me that were on their phones because Jensen ended up saying the same things that he said over and over again. We've heard many, like the Uber partnership. We've had 5 different Uber partnerships with self-driving. Not that original. The humanoid robotic stuff, honestly, was just kind of cringe yesterday. Not that original. They had a video of a guy, animated robot playing a guitar, singing about GTC. Like, a lot of it was just not stuff that I think the street cared about because they've heard them say it over and over and over again. The only thing that was new was this $1 trillion number. And then number 2 was the OpenClaw stuff, which I definitely do think was valuable, him talking about OpenClaw and the open source agent ecosystem. But, at the end of the day, agents aren't necessarily being fully monetized yet. And I don't even think NVIDIA knows exactly how they're going to monetize the software offering around agents. 184.49 right here on NVIDIA. So when you're looking for new things, like Vera Rubin, everything that he announced yesterday was announced also at CES. Everything they talked about in terms of the CUDA libraries moat, right? Which CUDA is a big part of the developer ecosystem of NVIDIA. That was also discussed at CES. So just realistically, if you didn't hear the past year and a half of Jensen talking about product updates and ideas, you would be very impressed because there would be a bunch of new things. If you did, the only thing that got your attention was this OpenClaw stuff and the new agentic ecosystem and the $1 trillion number. And the problem is the $1 trillion number wasn't even new against consensus estimates, even though it sounded like it was interesting. Remember, the $500 billion in 5 quarters was new back in October. That's when the stock hit 200 originally, because he's talking about $500 billion in 5 quarters. Like, no one expected that. Now the expectations have increased because the market cap has increased and people have said, all right, let's see what NVIDIA can do over the next 2 years. And he basically affirmed and confirmed that they're going to be able to reach those analyst updates, which they're probably going to beat $1 trillion. It's just, it's not the level that people thought about originally. So regardless, I thought the event was good. I thought the keynote was good. And I know I even sound crazy saying my expectations were higher, but at this point, the company is worth $4.5 trillion. If we want to see the stock move higher materially on these announcements, I think it should be higher regardless of these announcements today. But if we're expecting this announcement, this event to be a catalyst, then we have to see something new. And we just didn't get anything new. That's not bearish. It's just, it's the reality, but there was nothing that new that was announced here, which is why I think the street is not really that excited about it. Having said that, if the stock gaps up to 195 today, I don't think the street would be wrong because we already think it should be there, but it is what it is. And overall, I think these events were more to basically highlight their partners and all the stuff they're doing in the ecosystem and uplift those partners. He talked about software yesterday and how they're introducing new open source infrastructure for agents with Salesforce and Adobe and ServiceNow and all those companies. Bill McDermott was there. So you had a lot of the software players kind of show up and continue to show how much they are accelerating their partnerships with NVIDIA. You just didn't get that massive announcement from NVIDIA themselves outside of that $1 trillion number. But outside of that, it was good. It made sense. We are out of catalyst now, folks, until earnings. I mean, this was the last big market catalyst. I mean, you have a couple earnings left this year or this week with Micron and FedEx and stuff. But outside of that, this was the big market moving catalyst. It was NVIDIA. It ended up helping the market yesterday. S&P did get a bit of a bump. And today we're going to see if we can get a little bit more than the 1% we got yesterday, and see if we can get 2 green days in a row. 671.24 on the S&P. Bitcoin almost spiked to 76 yesterday. We're back at 73.8. It did spike to 76, stayed above 76 for a couple seconds, then it came back down. It's nice to see some of this risk on momentum also translate to BTC, but this one also not really cracking above that $75,000 level. All right, let's get into some of the other headlines. Again, thank you all for being here. NVIDIA GTC, it was fun, good event. The $1 trillion number was important, but now the market's going to have to price that in and see if we can get through this war, which I think is going to be the next major catalyst if we can move on from it. If you're asking about Nebius, yes, they did dilute. We'll see how the stock reacts when the market opens. But again, if they're going to sign a $27 billion deal with Meta, they're going to need the CapEx to be able to finance that deal. And same thing with Iran, same thing with CoreWeave. They're going to have to dilute, whether it's convertible notes, equity, ATMs, whatever it may be. But you kind of just have to deal with it if you are long the story itself. Okay, so some of these other headlines. Let's pull up a couple of these different things. So first of all, Qualcomm just announced a $20 billion buyback. By the way, freaking Salesforce already executed their buyback yesterday, which I thought was incredible. They put in a advanced prepayment for 25 million shares, and they bought back their stock. They raised in the debt markets 50 billion, and they bought back 25 billion of that 50 billion for their buyback. Qualcomm right there up 2.6%. You're seeing a lot more companies take advantage of the buyback. And if we have a market crash, it would be a bad idea. But if this is kind of the proverbial bottom, then maybe the market can keep going from there. Ed Yardeni came out today and he said, we were expecting a 10 to 15% correction. Now we think that the 5% drop from the highs of 2026 are enough to warrant the pain that we were already pricing in. So maybe this kind of 5% drawdown from the highs we've had, 3% down for the year is enough of the pain, or maybe we actually do have to feel a lot more. But Ed Yardeni's coming out saying, hey, this probably is the bottom. And so maybe some of these companies buying back their stock at these levels is not the worst thing in the world. Salesforce right there is up 0.4%. Adobe's up 0.5%. OpenAI, they have a new partnership with Amazon. OpenAI signs AWS deal and bid to win government contracts. This is very, very smart for OpenAI. Why? Because AWS has a lot of government contracts, and AWS is one of the critical backbones in terms of the hyperscaler world for government contracts and cloud computing. So obviously Dario and Anthropic are still going to be labeled as a supply chain risk. That's now going to go to court. But if Dario ends up losing that, then Anthropic is probably going to be able to not get those deals. OpenAI is. And for OpenAI to get those deals, they're going to have to be working with one of the largest government cloud providers, which is AWS. And what's also really important about AWS and OpenAI is that, remember, Amazon's investing $50 billion inside of OpenAI. So it kind of makes sense that if they're going to be working with one of their model providers and they already have these government contracts and they're the cloud provider, that they are investing in the model provider themselves. OpenAI has been having a good couple weeks. It's been having a good couple weeks. If they get all these government contracts and they're able to get all these investments, I mean, again, they just raised that $830 billion. I think that company is headed in the right direction for that IPO. And if they can keep growing revenues at the pace that they're growing at, then that also is going to be something strong for them as well. Meta, that's flat right now. Meta, I thought would get a bigger reaction yesterday after that 20% layoff, which I know hasn't been confirmed, but if it is true, even if it's 15, even if it's 10% layoffs, that's 7,000 people that Meta is going to be saving money on. The market didn't really react to it that much. So I wonder if the market's a little bit more concerned about other things, but Meta right there is still stuck at that $627 range. Shopify as well at $127, then SoFi back at $1771 in the pre-markets. What do you think about Orbs securing a $25 million investment in OpenAI? I think it's really weird, but Orbs is now an OpenAI proxy. Bitmine invested in OpenAI in Orbs yesterday, and then Orbs invested in OpenAI. I really don't get it. I don't know, guys. I've never been a fan of Orbs. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think WorldCoin's features have some level of usability and adaptability in the world of authentication, but these proxy investments into other companies, it's kind of weird. So I'd rather just buy Microsoft if you want pure OpenAI exposure, but maybe Orbs can run just based on a good headline on OpenAI and people think Orbs is the play to trade it. Microsoft right there just below 400 in the pre-markets. But overall, the DATs investing in private companies is kind of weird because they should be buying more of their crypto coin, but I think we've already seen it with Mr. Beast and Bitmine as that relationship has been played out. What do you think about the Uber NVIDIA partnership? I don't think there is a partnership with Uber NVIDIA. They have literally been talking about this since 2024, which is, the stock's reacting right now. Uber's up 3.65%. Maybe the market actually believes it, but at the end of the day, NVIDIA has said for years that we're going to be working with Uber to accelerate self-driving. I mean, until the technology is there and until the inventory of cars that are there on the road to be able to actually function as a robotaxi and that are inside of the NVIDIA ecosystem, along with the Uber aggregator ecosystem, then there's no real partnership, right? And that's why I think the market was just kind of at Jensen's GTC yesterday. As impressive as it was like we've heard all of these things before, and there's just nothing that new that's capturing people's attention yet. And to NVIDIA's credit, I mean, like they've been putting out so many new things a year. They don't have the ability to like put out 17 different new ideas and products, but at the scale that they are, that's what the market's expecting. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but Uber is getting a lift right there, up 4% right now in the pre-market. The other big announcement we had yesterday, which was also very weird, and I hope it doesn't happen. I thought this kind of went under the radar after it was first announced back in 2025, and I threw a bit of a hissy fit about this, and unfortunately, it looks like it's coming back to life. By the way, Trump tweeted last night that Venezuela should be the 51st state. So for those that are looking for your Trump updates, that's what you got. We'll talk more about the war in a second, but he is suggesting that the United States merge with Venezuela. So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is preparing a proposal to eliminate the requirement to report earnings quarterly and instead give companies the option to share results twice a year. The proposal is expected to be published as soon as next month. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Now, the number one reason why I'm not a fan is because I do a market close for 200 out of 300 days of the year. And I really like covering earnings. Okay. So selfishly, I like to know what happens every 90 days because that gives me more to analyze and discuss. And it's fun. It's a sport for all of us, right? We're addicted to the game of this stuff. And so if they were to take that away and we would have to wait 6 months to know what our companies or how or not what our investments are performing like, but how the general, like I'm not invested in Lululemon, but I want to know every 90 days, how are their sales going? Because it gives me a read on the consumer. For having to wait 6 months to get that information, I think is less transparency, even if, it's still the same transparency, but less frequent, but that in a way it feels less transparent because you're not getting the information as quick. And I don't think this is going to help companies optimize for the long term. People are like, oh, that means companies going to be focused more on like long term. Like, no, they're going to be hyper optimizing for 6 months instead of 3 months. That's not really long term. Costco, which is one of the biggest long term investments, Joseph Carlson made a great point yesterday, releases their KPIs every single month because they know that if they want investors to use their hard earned money to hold on to the stock, which at the end of the day is how the executives get paid, then they need to be able to put out big boy financials that everyone can see and diligently go through to be able to make the decision on if they want to continue allocating capital to these companies. So if they do this every 6 months, I just don't think it's going to be exciting. So I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, we will figure out how to evaluate. I'm just so jealous because it's going to hurt the content. Like, it's fun covering earnings, dude. We get our Super Bowl every 90 days. Like in the next freaking 3 weeks, we'll have bank earnings and we'll start off in April. It'll be like earnings never even ended for Q1, or Q4. We're just getting into Q1, but unfortunately it is what it is. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but this is what Paul Atkins said he would do, the chair of the SEC, a while ago. And it looks like now he's getting into it. Robinhood right there, 75.53 in the pre-market. Amazon, that's up a little bit. Where is Rocket Lab? Rocket Lab is also green, 71.42. SanDisk, that's up 1.69%. And then NVIDIA is up 1% in the pre-market as well. Companies have the choice to do this. So that's also what I heard, that this is going to be an optional reporting requirement as well. And if that's true that it's optional, which hasn't been fully confirmed, but some of the stuff I read was that it's optional, I do think that limits a lot of the extent of the damage, because I think most companies, if they pick to not report, like if Amazon says, yeah, we're not going to report every 90 days, I don't know, maybe some investors would be annoyed by that and they take that capital to Google instead, right? There's only so much capital that's out there to be invested in the hyperscaler. So, maybe companies that have been forced to invest every 90 days or show their investors their results every 90 days are going to stay with it. Vlad from Robinhood, when we had him on the podcast, he said that he likes the 90-day cadence because it literally pushes the company to hit their numbers every 3 months. And, these tech workers that we're investing in, they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Like, if you're subsidizing those salaries, you want them to put in the work to be able to hit their numbers and grow their companies if you're investing in a growth stock. And that pressure of having to hit your numbers every 90 days, I think is personally very important. And I think some other CEOs do as well. So, hopefully that momentum ends up sticking. Qualcomm getting that 3% bump off that $20 billion buyback that was announced right now. And that one getting a bit more momentum, 3% right there after that buyback. What about CRM? They announced it yesterday. CRM is up about 0.5%. 199 in the pre-market. All right, the war. Let's talk about that. So Trump once again had a ton of sound bites yesterday. He was speaking to a bunch of different reporters. He had this round table where he was talking about a bunch of different things as well. Ultimately, the confusion, I think, still remains on this idea on if the war is going to end. Here's a couple clips. This one I thought was pretty interesting when he was asked explicitly what he thinks about his head AI and crypto advisor, David Sachs, saying that the war should end right now.
One of your advisors, David Sachs, said the other week that the U.S. should, quote, declare victory and get out of the Iran war. He also warned that if the conflict escalates, Israel may contemplate the use of a nuclear weapon. Has he shared that assessment with you?
No, yes. Israel wouldn't do that. Israel would never do that. And yeah, there's a theory. You pounded them to hell and you could just leave now and it'll take 10 years for them to build back not nearly what they have right now. And I guess that's another theory, but we want to have it ended so that another president doesn't have, look, for 47 years, no president was willing to do what I'm doing, and they should have done it a long time ago. It would have been a lot easier. There's no president that wanted to do it. And yet every president knew. I've spoken to a certain president who I like, actually, a past president, former president. He said, I wish I did it. I wish I did, but they didn't do it. I'm doing it. Yeah.
Which president?
I can't tell you that. I don't want to embarrass him. It would be very bad for his career, even though he's got no career left. Go ahead, please.
So, I mean, once again, you got Trump kind of like, it's interesting, right? Because Trump said he wants the war to end soon. And David Sachs says, okay, the war should end soon. Again, David Sachs is one of his biggest advisors. And Trump is once again disagreeing with not only David Sachs, but himself, right? Because if David Sachs is kind of agreeing with you by saying the war should end soon, even though he's disagreeing with kind of the logic of the war in itself, you would think Trump would just say, yeah, I think the war should end soon and we're going to keep working on it. But instead he goes the opposite, which once again creates more conflicting narratives and why crude kind of started to pump back up. It was below 90 at one point yesterday. We are right back to 94, folks. So it's not 104, which is good, like it was Sunday night, but it is 94, which, you know, continues to put some pressure on global oil prices. The moment this thing falls back to 70, the stock market's going up, and it's going up big. But unfortunately, we are just not there yet. Here was Hassett this morning talking as well about oil and gas prices.
There's no way that President Trump's going to back down until he sees this through to the end.
What does that mean? Sees this through to the end, meaning regime change,
Well,
meaning
he
the
will
strait
decide,
is reopened?
But he wants to make sure that Iran cannot harm its neighbors and the U.S. ever again. And so he's destroyed the Navy, destroyed the Air Force, finished off most of the missile sites. And we want to know for sure that Iran is not going to challenge the world again with terrorism. And once we have a sense that we've accomplished that goal, we've defanged them, then President Trump will make the call on his own that the war is over. There's no way that President Trump's going to back.
Again, markets are left wondering, you know, when is that really going to be the answer? And yes, Trump did say that he talked to another president about this issue. A lot of people are saying he 47 talked to 45. I know that was a joke last night. I don't know. Maybe he did talk to another president. Maybe he didn't. But look, markets, we've lost some critical levels on the S&P. So a lot of the extent of the damage has already happened because of this war. And as long as we're holding above 670, I'm happy, even if we stay flat right here, because losing 660 was just going to be a nightmare. And, you know, as oil has come down below from 120, we've been able to at least not hit those levels on the S&P. But I wonder how much time we have left. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is kind of open, kind of not open. You have the 400 million barrels of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that have been released, which buys us about 2 more weeks. Eventually, this war has to come to an end, and, you know, hopefully sooner than later. But if it's not sooner, then it's just one of those variables that all of us have to deal with as we try to navigate the equity markets. Here's another couple clips of Trump. This was him yesterday about Cuba.
I think Cuba, I don't know, is in its own way, if you know, tourism and everything else, it's a beautiful island, great weather. They're not in a hurricane zone, which is nice for a change, you know. They won't be asking us for money for hurricanes every week. But I think Cuba's the end. You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. You know, when will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it. I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation right now. They were for a long time. Very violent leaders. I think Cuba, I don't know, in its own way.
I don't know if Trump is going to launch a military campaign to, in his words, take Cuba, but this is what we're hearing from him. And you have a lot of speculation that this is kind of how he wants to form the rest of his legacy, be this person who's conquered many countries. And, that's the route he's on, because again, the David Sacks of the world are not giving him this advice. They are very anti-war. So whoever he's listening to, that is, the frame of reference that he's taking here. And the question just becomes, is he serious about that? And is that going to be the next level of kind of escalating this conflict? And then here's what Trump said when he was asked about what are world leaders telling him about the military conflict in Iran.
You're doing a job for the rest of the world. In your conversations with your counterparts, are they thanking you? What are their conversations like when you talk about this military conflict that's taking place in Iran?
Well, they should be thanking me, because many of them get 90%. China, as an example, should be thanking us, but I don't expect to thank you, but they should be thanking us. Japan gets 95%, China 91%. Many of the countries, South Korea gets a tremendous percentage of their oil and therefore their energy from the Straits, or as they call it, the Strait. And they should be not only thanking us, they should be helping us. What does surprise me is that they're not eager to help. There are a couple. We'll be announcing some names here. There are some that really were right up front. I would announce their name now, other than maybe they prefer it not being announced for whatever reason.
All right, and this is the last clip where Trump said this was actually a really good thing to do, because now NATO will defend other countries.
Get involved. I've been saying it for a long time. This is the greatest thing to come out of this. We spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO to defend other countries. And I always said, but if it ever comes time to defend us, they're not going to be there. Many of them would not be there. And we're going to have to start thinking more wisely in this country. Some have been very good. One or two have been great. I'll tell you who the great ones are at the right time. But there have been some that were right up there, Peter. They were right up there. They wanted to do it so much. Go ahead, Peter. You get involved. I've been saying it for a.
So that is how, the president of the United States is rationalizing this war. His argument is this is forcing NATO to come to the table, and NATO is going to have to become more consistent with actually being able to, wow, the market's going to open in 6 minutes. Where did the time go? Let me do the red-green poll in the chat. But NATO's going to have to be more consistent with actually defending its allies. The second thing to come out of this is that it will be used as a framework to potentially take other countries over, like Cuba, as Trump was saying that he would just quote unquote take them. And then third is obviously the real point of this whole thing, which from my understanding was stopping the nuclear weapons and the nuclear proliferation in Iran and creating, liberation for the Iranian people. Once again, I think that last part, the regime change, is going to be the biggest question. And, does that happen? I don't know, guys. It's a little hard to say that we're going to liberate the Iranian people without continuing to attack aggressively, especially the new Ayatollah, or putting boots on the ground. And I don't think Trump wants to do either. I don't think Trump wants to kill the new Ayatollah, and I don't think he wants to put boots on the ground. So maybe there's an off-ramp that's going to be created in the coming days to get out of this situation, or at least coming weeks. But as of now, this is how we got to navigate it. S&P 500 actually making a move right here in the pre-market, folks. We're up 0.5%, which is a hell of a move. Hell of a move right there, 672. Let's see if we can keep that going. Put in the chat right now if you think it stays or it fades. Yesterday, we had a full 1% day. This would be the first time, if we close green in the next 7 hours, that we'd be green 2 days in a row since early February. So we have not had 2 green closes in a row in about a month and a half. It would be very nice to see that happen today. And maybe the backs of the NVIDIA announcement can make that happen. NVIDIA as well, getting a 1% pump. But this also might be some pre-market movement that doesn't end up holding through. So we are going to see Iraq negotiates with Iran to reopen vital oil shipping route. That is a good headline. Hopefully we see more of that. Saudi Arabia also had some headlines yesterday of opening up their refineries. So we are seeing some things start to clear up as long as the Strait of Hormuz continues to be open, which there were a couple headlines yesterday that multiple countries are working with the United States to have an escortation of other Navy ships through the Strait, which is going to be really important. But again, this war has got to come to an end for the market to officially move forward from this. Daniel said, I love the little bell yesterday. Well, we will have another little bell in the next 3 minutes. It's just obnoxious to bring a big bell in a hotel because it's 6:30 right now. People are sleeping. But you still have to ring some type of bell to open up this market. Why is Nebius down again? Nebius offered about $4 billion worth of dilution, convertible notes. They're not diluting today, but this will dilute in the future. So the market's pricing that in. I really wonder if the market can look past this and just move on and have that stock trend right back up to 130, which it was at yesterday. It was up 14%. But also this is the inevitability of investing in the neoclouds. You're going to have to deal with some level of dilution, and you kind of just got to look past it and say it's part of the ability for them to get these massive deals with Meta and Microsoft. And the street's not going to be happy about it, but this is also part of being an investor in those companies. AMD, that's up 0.4%. Micron's up 2.4%. So Micron's going to be important. Yesterday, the Micron CEO was with Jensen, actually gave him a gift. Evan Stock Market News caught that picture, which was super cool. So Micron's earnings are going to be tomorrow. It's going to be very important to see what they can do. NVIDIA announced some new LPU Grok architecture as well that helps them with memory, which was one of the things that kind of went under the radar yesterday, even though it was kind of known about for the past couple months. But that was also something that was really important. And yeah, you had Jensen walking the floor. I actually wasn't here when Jensen was walking the floor of the convention center. I was doing an interview, but it would be super cool to just catch Jensen walking around. But the vibes here are pretty cool. Just seeing him do that and seeing all the momentum takes place. Last headline before we get into the market open, Morgan Stanley is saying default rates in direct lending could climb to 8% as AI pressure builds on software borrowers. The firm says software loans carry the highest leverage, weakest coverage ratios, and a front-loaded maturity wall with 11% maturing in 2027 and 20% maturing in 2028. This is why private credit firms have been under pressure. This is why the fintechs have been under pressure. And this is why the software companies have been under pressure. If the software loans that were issued 7-8 years ago end up being defaulted or their mark to market is significantly less bang for your buck, 20, 30 cents on the dollar versus 90, 80 cents on the dollar that people thought they could get 5 months ago, that's going to create a little bit of an issue in private credit. Hopefully it's not a 2008 type of issue, which I don't think it is. But, part of the reason those stocks have seen their yields go down substantially is just waiting on when that overhead of private credit is not as big of a deal anymore. All right, here we go. 20 seconds. Let's see what we can do. Thank you all for being here once again. We are going to see if we can get 2 green days in a row, which would be very exciting. Let's see if the market gives any love to NVIDIA. And let's see if as a result that can pump up the variety of these different names. 2 green days in a row would be the first time in over a month. Tuesday, March 17th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right. Wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P 500, 672.25. 672.25. We are green on the day, up about 0.5%. That's what we had in the pre-market. Let's see if we can hold that level. NVIDIA, red candle as soon as she opens. 183.65 down from 185. Market's just not ready to give it that premium yet. SanDisk, that's up 2%. Webull, that's up 0.5%. Robinhood up 1.3%. CoreWeave goes red. CoreWeave goes red. Nebius also goes red on dilution. That's down 7%. Just lost 120 for a second. Salesforce goes red. Microsoft goes red. Bloom goes red. Rubrik goes red. HIMS goes red. AMD goes red. Vertiv, which had a bump yesterday, goes red. IREN goes red. Down 2. Tesla goes red. So those are your kind of major names that ended up going red. Let's see if they actually stay red or if they continue down. Ondas acquired another company today for $140 million. I don't know exactly the terms of the deals, but this is another reason why I need to spend some time with Ondas, because they're deploying this strategy of like acquiring multiple companies and kind of becoming a holding company over these companies, which I think they have some real synergies with. But it does take a lot to analyze why they're buying all these companies. So I can't really tell you why they bought this company today, but I'm going to try to make a list of all the companies they bought and then see what all the synergies are. That stock not really getting some love, down 1.2% on that acquisition. Navitas was up 15% yesterday. That's down 0.5%. Silver's down. Gold is down. AppLovin, that's flat on the day. OSS has earnings tomorrow. That is up 3% on the day. JP Morgan's up 1%. Bank of America's up 1%. The banks are doing okay. Nebius back to 120, down about 7.3%. Orbs is down 1%. S&P holding on to its momentum. High of the day right here at 672.80. 672.80. Is Hood getting a pump? Hood is getting a little bit of a pump, 2%. Bitcoin's actually red. So not sure why Hood's moving. Now, granted, Hood didn't move yesterday when Bitcoin was moving, so maybe it's a little bit of a catch-up trade. Where is Circle? Circle is down. This one was also up yesterday. I don't know why Coherent and Lumentum are selling off as aggressively as they are. This was when you woke up in the morning. These guys were already down 5%, continuing to go down 6% right here. The photonics plays have definitely taken a breather. Lumentum down 5.6%, and then AAOI, which I know a lot of people got excited for. That stock's down 32% in the past 5 days. So some of these AI supply chain bottlenecks, they have their moment, and maybe they'll get their moment again. But as of now, I mean, quite frankly, a lot of them diluted, like AAOI. And I think that's why the street's a little concerned about them. Bitmine, that's up a little bit on the day. ASTS breaking back through 90. That's nice to see. Broadcom, which I don't think deserves to be anywhere below 350, still chilling at 326. Oracle had a great earnings, and 147 to 157. It was at 165, so it's faded a little bit of the move, but definitely the earnings justified some momentum, and you're seeing that right there at 157. Nike goes green after 12 days of red. D-Wave's up a little bit. You had SMH up about 0.69%, and then Coinbase also green, up 2.4% on the day. Grab is up 3% somehow, 384 on Grab. Again, for those that ask my thoughts on Grab, once again, I'm going to give them till Q1 and see what results they put up. I don't understand why the street is keeping them depressed at these levels. Quite frankly, I think the shorts are in control right now. And, the shorts, when they have 10% of the float, they're going to be able to continue manipulating it and keeping it down. And I don't even blame the shorts for doing that. I mean, if it's working, it's working, right? So it is what it is. But the fundamentals continue to be strong, in my opinion. 20% revenue growth, 40% EBITDA growth. I think it might just take a few quarters for the street to catch up with it. But that stock has been hit, 2.8% up on the day. Robinhood getting a nice move, 2.39%. You're seeing some more momentum right there, 77.21 on the hood. That's up 3. Rocket Lab as well broke through 70 yesterday, now back above 71. Lemonade did get an upgrade this morning, I think, to $90. That's why that stock is up 10% on the day. So Lemonade finally getting some love. Uber, again, that partnership with NVIDIA, 78. Although it's been announced a billion times, I guess that partnership is what the street cares about. Jensen did mention copper and photonics yesterday. He did. It just was not enough to get the photonics plays that were already up 300% year to date to continue pumping, unfortunately. Nebius getting a nasty 8% move. Again, this is what happens with dilution. It is what it is. I think if you're long CoreWeave, Nebius, Iran, you can't be too upset about it. This is just part of the game in terms of investing in these stocks. But that one is seeing some pain right there. And CoreWeave and Iran kind of falling in sympathy as well. By the way, Nebius and CoreWeave, massive sponsors for GTC. Like, you see their billboard everywhere. They have merch, they have billboards, they're on the freaking train going through San Jose. So the Neo Clouds, the only one we didn't see the most of is Iran. Iran got like a billboard near a bus seat. That's the most I've seen of Iran. But CoreWeave and Nebius, they're sponsoring a ton of stuff at GTC. S&P 500, 673. 673, you're getting a new high of day. Oklow's up 8%. I guess there had to be an Oklo announcement today. Let's pull that up. Oklo getting some love right there, 8.2% on the day. Oklo announces DOE approval for nuclear safety design agreement of Aurora Powerhouse at Idaho National Laboratory. That'll do it. Oklo right there, up 7.2%. Lemonade up 11 again on that price target upgrade that they got, which is also green. Kumar, thanks for the super chat. Coherent and Light are down because the market misinterpreted NVIDIA's comments yesterday. The thing about these supply chain bottlenecks, and the only one that I don't think has to deal with this as aggressively as the memory names, Micron did hit all-time highs for a second at 455, is that if Jensen announces anything that sounds like NVIDIA is going to commoditize and or take over the space of the supply chain provider, those stocks are going to get hit pretty badly, even if you're right that it's being misinterpreted. So that could be the reason for the decline. But one of the things you have to deal with if you're going to invest in the neo clouds or in the AI supply chain bottlenecks, like a memory, but the demand on DRAM has just been so strong that Micron and SanDisk haven't had to deal with this. Is that if NVIDIA announces something that potentially takes away the momentum from the overall story around the particular supplier of a part of the chain for the GPU, that could come into question or bring into question the extent of the investment thesis on a lot of these names. S&P, she's really going, folks. Could we see 675? Look at that chart, 673.30. Back above 670 is what we needed. If we can see 675, this would be fun. We got to see if we can get there. Reddit, are we green? Are we at 140? Reddit, 143. Okay, so that's good. 132 last week, now 143. Seeing a little bit of a bigger move right here. Yes, Robinhood is also allowing you to get option collateral interest now. So if you sell puts, you can generate, I think, like a 3% yield on those without having to have that money stay idle. SoFi right there up 1.5%. I did see that feature roll out to a lot of people yesterday, and it is exciting to see them give you interest. A lot of this stuff is basic, right? Like Schwab and Fidelity have done this for years. So the fact that they're introducing this stuff is super, super important. Lemonade still up 10.5. You're still seeing some red candles across the neo clouds and the supply chain names outside of memory. I ran right there 44. Even though memory, you also have some red candles because they're losing their highs from 454 to now 447 on Micron. SanDisk has almost at 715. That's at 709. So that one's faded a little bit as well. Is PayPal getting some relief? Is it? PayPal is up 3%. I think that is a little bit of relief. Wow, Joe Kent, Trump's director of national counterterrorism, has resigned. Cactus, is this a real quote? Did he actually say this? Oh, shit, it is. Okay, he said, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel's powerful American lobby. Holy crap. What's this guy's name? Joe Kent. I've never heard of this. And his name sounds familiar, though, right? Yeah, I feel like I've seen this guy. Wow, that is the first public official to come out and say he is against the war. This guy, Joe Kent, director of the United States National Counterterrorism Center, which is ironic because Iran is like one of the biggest state sponsors of terrorism. And so the guy who's directing the Counterterrorism Center is saying that I don't want to go to war with the country that is accused of the most terrorism, especially across the United States. That is wild, bro. That is it. I wonder if that gives other officials the framework to say, all right, if he did it, I'm going to do it. Or if this guy's a one-off. I also wonder what Trump's Truth Social post is going to be about this guy. Trump just tweeted about the Save America Act. He said it's one of the most important and consequential pieces of legislation. No more rigged election. I will never endorse anyone who votes against the Save America Act. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. That's what we got from Trump. Wow, that's interesting. All right, we'll see if that continues to create some headlines for the National Terrorism Director Counselor, who is now officially left. Wow, look at software getting a move, 2%. 2% on software. IGV 8647. Where is NVIDIA? NVIDIA is kind of flat. Okay, so software is getting the bid. Grab's getting a little bit of a bid. Robinhood's getting a bit of a bid. Bitcoin also back above 74. And then the S&P high of day. Mag 7 participating a little bit. Meta's up 1.3. What about Google? Google's up 0.3. Microsoft is kind of seen as a SaaS, but they are also getting some love at 402. Tesla's still below 400, but Tesla is green at 396. Amazon was up a little bit yesterday. Amazon Shopify is up 3%. Yup, Amazon is continuing to hold on to its green. That's up another 1%. And you're seeing some more of that excitement as well. Reddit's also pumping up. Software and banks, you're getting some love. Lemonade, they got that upgrade. Senators asked ByteDance to shut down C-Dance AI video app. Well, ByteDance is a Chinese company. I don't know if they're gonna be allowed to Just tell ByteDance to not do that. Seed Dance is crazy though. We showed a couple of videos on the channel last week of Seed Dance. It's the AI reasoning model for video model for ByteDance. It definitely looks like real life. ARM right there. That's also up 3.25%, as well as that's green. Interesting. Very interesting. Canada rules out joining military operations against Iran. Well, Starmer said the same thing yesterday. So it's not like Canada's saying something that's that new. I know who Clark Kent is, guys, for all those saying that. But I don't think this guy's related to Clark Kent. Oh, yeah, Jensen will be on CNBC soon in a little bit. Joe Kent, director of the United States National Counterterrorism Center, officially resigns from the Trump administration. I'm waiting to see what Trump says about that. That's the first person to leave the Trump administration based on this specific deal. ARM right there, 125. Palantir, are we getting a move? Palantir, a little bit of a move, 154. Palantir's been holding the 150s very nicely, which I think is the most important thing for them to just hold on to these levels. SoFi's up 2%. NVIDIA, again, 184. We'll see what happens when Jensen gets on in 15 minutes and what he has to say about it. Microsoft's at 401. Zeta, little 3% pop. That's also not horrible here. I mean, we're getting some green, folks. We are getting some green. France and Germany won't join the war as well. Yes, Trump did actually praise France yesterday, even though he said he said he would rate them like an 8 out of 10 on how much they've been helping. So, you know, they haven't been all in on the war, but he is more happy with France than some of the other countries.
Have you been speaking with the French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I have spoken to him. He's been on a scale of 0 to 10. I'd say he's been an 8. Not perfect, but it's France.
Are you
We don't expect perfect.
Are you?
So he is happier with France than not. Now, what did scare me yesterday, guys, was Fartcoin was up 15% yesterday. And, you know, Bitcoin was also up at 76,000, so I get it. All the altcoins are going to pump, but it was kind of weird seeing some of those like old altcoins coming back into light. Fartcoin is down 6% today, but you are seeing a bit more momentum come back into some of those altcoins, which kind of signals risk on, but it also is kind of weird because we're not really risk on given what's happening with the war and oil. So, you know, maybe there will be a transition, but right now we're not necessarily seeing that yet. PayPal right there, that's up 2.69. SoFi's up 2.8. Reddit's up 4% on the day. Reddit getting some more love, which is nice to see. Rocket Lab, is that going green? Rocket Lab is also going green. 4.29%. 4.29% on Mr. Lab of Rocket, 74.35. Again, that SpaceX IPO is headed for June. We should be getting the S1 soon, which, you know, I think a lot of us would be interested to read how they are presenting these financials, but 1.75 trillion is going to be a big story. Oh, I forgot. Jensen did spend some time yesterday on data centers in space. So for everyone that cares about that thesis, you know, Jensen talked about it. They've already had GPUs deployed in data centers, but they backed a bunch of startups that are doing that. So they didn't mention they have more space data center plans, which is going to be important, and we'll continue to kind of accelerate that story for SpaceX as well. SoFi at 18, NVIDIA 184.20, Coinbase up 2, Elf's up 2, UiPath's up 2.67. All the private credit names actually catching a bid. Now they did this yesterday, then they went red in the middle of the day, but Blue Owl's up 5, KKR is up 3.6, and then Apollo is also up 4.28%. Again, Jensen will be on in a second. Ondas is up about 1%, and then Aero Environment, another drone stock, that's also up 2.6%. The financials today, guys, are doing great. I don't know what's gotten into the market. Look at XLF. That's up almost 2%. Financials are excited. Redwire is up 5.5. That's also correct. Why is Nebius down 9%? Again, they diluted earlier today, and that is why you're seeing some of the pain there on the Neo Clouds. Redwire's up 4. Lunar should be up at least 2 or 3. Lunar's up 2.7. ASTS is also up 3. I guess Space is catching a bid today. I guess Space is catching a little bit of a bid. Do we have average home prices? I think we did get average home prices just now. Let me pull that up. That macro data should have just come in. We are looking at 1.8% in 2026, 2.5% in 2027. Expectation was 1.4% and 2.7%. U.S. average home prices to rise 1.8% in 2026, 2.5% in 2027. The pending home sales we saw last Wednesday were not good. So, until we open up the housing market, obviously increasing supply would be necessary to get those prices down. Right now, that's just not exactly happening. 73.88 right here on Rocket Lab. Palantir at 155, Bitcoin just at 73, Nvidia 183.64. That one's now looking like it might turn red, and then Micron also looking like it might go red. Reddit still having a good day, up 4%. Oil, crude is 94. It is the low of the day. It was lower yesterday, but hopefully we can get below 94. Did you say we can now collect interest on option collateral on Robinhood? Yes. I don't know if it's rolled out to everybody, but it's rolled out to a decent chunk of people. And if you update the app, it might be there. Duolingo's up 6% as well. If you have 50,000 in collateral for puts on some stock, that 50K can still collect interest without not being able to generate any of that interest. Which, again, Schwab and Fidelity have done for a long time, so it's good for Hood to do it as well. White House has received offer from Democrats on DHS funding. Okay, so that's another thing we don't talk about as much, which we should be, which is that we could still have a government shutdown if we don't figure out how to deal with the DHS funding, which culminated from the situation with ICE. And so now the White House looks like they've received the funding proposal from the Democrats on DHS funding. That's another thing that's going to have to be negotiated probably over the coming weeks to see if we can have that fit within the actual budget itself. Now, remember, Republicans are also potentially thinking if they can't get the Save America Voting Act passed through Congress, they're going to do it through reconciliation, which is trying to use a form of working with the U.S. budget to be able to get a bill passed through Congress. It's what a lot of Senates are ultimately having to do if they can't get the majority that they need to vote on a bill. But it's just, how do you justify a Voting Rights Act with budgetary concerns? There's a way to do it in terms of giving the states extra money, stuff like that, but it might not be the easiest way, which is why Trump is tweeting so much about this Save America Act and trying to get every Republican to vote for it. Rocket Lab right there, that's up 4%. ASTS up 3.4%, and then Duolingo still up 5.9 on the day. By the way, yes, for those talking about TSA, I missed my first flight coming to California from Jersey, not because I woke up late, but because the line to get through security took 35 minutes. And that's because, well, they told me it was because of spring break, but realistically, I think it was because there was a lot of TSA workers that were on strike. And so, and I'm hearing this across the entire country from a bunch of other people that came to GCC. So hopefully this resolves some of the TSA stuff when we get this budget passed, but it is definitely affecting people at the airport right now. And then you put spring break on top of that. A lot of airports are just a lot more crowded. Amazon going green, 214. That's up on the day. 35 minutes is great. Okay, look, I don't know about you guys, but in Newark, EWR, it's usually less than 10 minutes, dude. It's usually, especially at 5 a.m. in the morning. It's there's not that many people there. And the line to get to the escalator, to get up to where it takes you to get to the security check was there's 300 people there, and it was moving quick, yeah, but it was you just sat in line for that long, and I just was not, I have not experienced this in years, and it feels like it. Now I should have TSA pre-check. I travel too much to not have that, and this experience told me it's time to just buy pre. It's $100 for a couple of years. It's it's a no-brainer, but it looks like that's what I'm gonna have to do. But usually it's such a short wait that I never even thought about it. PayPal, that's up 3% now on the day. PayPal one of the fintechs catching a real bid. What about Affirm? IGV also high of day. Affirm is also 2%. So fintechs and SaaS getting love. Fintechs and SaaS getting love. The neoclouds are getting hit. Nebius down 9.7%. CoreWeave is down 2%. IREN is down 3%. All right, so the neoclouds are down. The photonics plays are down. Healthcare is down a little bit. Some of these semis are down, like Broadcom. Software is up. Fintech is up. And then you have your growth stocks like a Reddit and a Shopify. They're up. S&P 674, baby. 674. Almost up another 1%. My wife says if you use a Chase or Amex, pre-check is paid for by them. You know, I might have to. I should get an Amex. I've had Chase forever. The reason I got my first United Chase credit card is because they gave you back like 25,000 miles when you signed up for it if you spent 5,000. And I put the first deposit on my Honda Civic with that 5,000 to get those miles, and those miles lasted for a while. But ever since then, I've been in Chase. So maybe it does make sense to do Amex. I probably should have got to the airport earlier, but also like I had to Uber to the airport and the surge pricing on the Uber was crazy. So I was like, let me wait 20 minutes. I'm not going to be late to my flight, but I waited 20 minutes. So I guess it was my fault. You could say that. But when I got there, I did not expect a 35-minute wait just to get to security because it usually doesn't happen. But I think that's what's taking place when TSA agents aren't working as much. Zeta also, software really getting a bid, up 3.6% on the day. SoFi 1820. All right, SoFi getting a little bit more love. Let's see if that can get above 1850. That would also be nice. Okay, Jensen will be on in a couple minutes. Elf is also getting the pump. 76, 73. Elf was down from 100 a couple days ago. Bloomberg just said Iran's war is cost spiking, straining farmers ahead of midterm elections. That is another angle we don't talk about either. What happens when it comes to these midterm elections and what it's going to mean for the midterms in regards to the farmers, which are going to be, one of the other big candidates to vote as well. Newark took me 1.5 hours just for security midday, though. Well, I thought in the morning it would be okay, but I guess it was not. Says the same guy who likes to sit in the middle seat. Dude, I had the window seat on my first flight. I was so excited because I picked basic economy, so I couldn't pick my seat, okay? Call me cheap, whatever. I picked basic economy, so I couldn't get my seat, so they randomly gave me the window. I was like, all right, this is amazing. And then on the second flight, they were like, yeah, you're getting the middle. And dude, my neck after those 6 hours, because I slept, but like I slept standing up, or I guess sitting down, but with your head up. I just need rich enough to buy first class and not feel bad about it. Like, I feel like that's when you're rich, when you buy first class and you don't feel bad about it. Because if you buy first class and you actually think about it when you get off the plane, it's like, you're not really like, you can't really, it's like, you're like, you probably can't afford it. Realistically, you shouldn't do it. But if you can do it and you can get off the plane and be like, oh, I just wasted $2,000, but I didn't really waste $2,000 because I had a nice 6-hour nap, but I'm not paying $2,000 to have a 6-hour nap, dude. So it was painful, but it is what it is. Rocket Lab, 5% right there, 75. 5% right there, 75. We talked about the OpenAI AWS deal, very good for both parties. And again, it makes sense why AWS continues to invest in OpenAI. They're going to be doing a lot of collaboration with them most likely when it comes to these government deals. We have some new politicians. Josh Gottheimer bought GEV and UNH and ExxonMobil. GEV, UNH, and ExxonMobil. He is a Senate representative, a House of Representatives member, and he sold Palo Alto Networks, Cloudflare, Visa, FICO, and Intuit. Wow. Dude got rid of a lot of finance names. Intuit, Visa, FICO. FICO's had a horrible year. He bought he sold cybersecurity, sold Cloudflare, so software names, and then Intuit, Visa, FICO, those are finance names. But he bought GEV, UNH, and Exxon. Okay, so selling software, buying healthcare. UNH, I wonder when this thing, I think this thing is one announcement away from Medicare and Medicaid plans shifting how they think of subsidies and then the policy quota rates. That changes and maybe you get UNH at least back up to that $300 range. But unfortunately, January, they announced some stuff that really made it hard for UNH, Molina, CNC, et cetera, to make the same type of profit margins that they had before. Nabius loses 117, 116.93 on Nebius. That stock is now down 10% on the day. CoreWeave's down 2%. Iren is also down 2%. DoorDash is up 3%. Okay. DoorDash getting some love here. 173. They had one of the best earnings that they had in history a couple of weeks ago. Okay, picking your seat is not $20. Okay, picking your seat is more like $60 because I booked my sister's flight for a place she was going and I had to book her seat and it was definitely $60. It wasn't $20. I wish it was $20. But yeah, regardless, I mean, like, I don't know. It's random. Sometimes they give you what you want, but I stayed in the middle. The worst thing about getting the window, though, is I don't use the bathroom for 6 hours because I feel so bad telling the other two people to get up. So I'm kind of happy I didn't get the window. I still didn't use the bathroom when I was in the middle seat, but if I did get the window, I can guarantee I wouldn't have used the bathroom for 6 hours. I just think it's rude, bro. You're gonna make two other people get up so you can go pee? Like, are you kidding me? Like, where's like the decency and humanity to just like not do that anymore? So yeah, that's my personal philosophy on the window seat. All right, Nvidia's dumping. Not really, but she's officially going red. We need Jensen to get on CNBC now and tell everybody that things will be okay. He's not live yet. We'll transition once he's live. Nvidia goes red. It's probably not the best for the semiconductor names today. If we don't go green today on the S&P, which we are looking like, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. We got a lot of time left, but 673.79, we're up almost 1%. If we end up finishing red today and we actually don't get 2 green days back to back after this big move in the first 20 minutes, it would be pretty disappointing, not going to lie. Like the fact that Nvidia didn't pump yesterday was already disappointing, even though I get why it didn't, but it would also not be nice to see. I mean, until we reclaim some critical moving averages, yesterday was a dead cat bounce. And today might be as well if we close green, but we close at like 670 and, we're barely above where we were yesterday. So realistically, we need 680, 685. Like we need to actually get above those levels to say that this whole move is not for funsies. But time will tell if we get there. Palantir as well, 155, that one holding on. Just that green. Is Nvidia dropping due to Tesla's chip announcement? So that was with LG, right? I don't think that is having that much of an impact on Nvidia. I mean, that deal with LG and Tesla was announced. Oh no, that's not with LG. That's with Samsung, right? That deal was announced a while ago. Tesla and LG Energy Solutions yesterday announced they're going to build a $4.3 billion battery plant in Michigan to supply the car makers' energy storage systems. The Samsung chip deal that Tesla has, yeah, that was announced a while ago, so I don't think that would be a massive catalyst for Nvidia to the downside. Rivian, that's up 3.46%. That's getting a little bit of love. We will not have Technical Tuesday today, unfortunately. Steve will be doing it with Jason. I will be a bit busy at GTC, but Steve and Jason will be at it, and they'll be doing TT tonight there. WTI crude is at 93.78. That's falling down. The Dixie is 99.6. That one just below 100. And then gold and silver are up about 0.5%. Not seeing too much movement back into those assets like we saw back in January. SoFi holding on to 2%. Grab holding on to 2%. Robinhood holding on to about 1.5%. Let's see if we can pull up a couple other of these headlines. Jensen's still not live yet. He'll be on in a second. I wonder if he makes a comment about the stock, because remember last time at the Morgan Stanley conference, he actually was kind of annoyed about the stock. And he let people know that he was annoyed about the stock. So I wonder if that happens again here. We do have pending home sales. Let's pull that up. This is for the month of February.
Homes data with Diana Olick. Hey, Diana.
Good morning, Carl. Pending home sales in February rose 1.8% month to month, but were down 0.8% from February of last year. That according to the realtors. Now, this count is based on contract signings, so people out shopping during the month when mortgage rates were falling to multi-year lows. The average on the 30-year fixed even dipping below 6% briefly. That is not the case now, and the realtors did make note of that, saying the improved affordability could make a U-turn if oil prices and interest rates continue to rise. Now, sales were strongest month to month in the Midwest and South. Those are the regions where housing is most affordable. Markets seeing the strongest annual gains: San Diego, Jacksonville, San Jose, Denver, Miami, and Phoenix. Now, just a note, as we head into the all-important spring sales season for housing, apartment rents are softening, and that has landlords now giving more concessions. In fact, the highest level in over a decade as vacancies rise. For more on that, and how trouble in private credit could mean a big boost for commercial real estate, that is all in today's new Property Play newsletter. If you haven't signed up, go to it. CNBC.
As a result of the war in Iran. So Standard Chartered had a really good look at basically in the orange, you see the expectations before the war, February 27th. In blue is the line as of March 16th. So more recently post-war. And you can see the market was a lot more willing to bet on lower interest rates before the war. They have treated the war and traded the war as an inflation story. Higher oil prices, higher inflation, less room for the Fed to cut. In fact, right now, as you can see, the market doesn't expect a Fed cut until December. That's the only one of the year that the market is expecting right now. Back in February, the market was expecting a few cuts and a much more dovish reaction. The thought was, come June, if Kevin Warsh gets confirmed as Fed chair, he's going to come in dovish and get ready to cut in June. Well, guess what? June now has less than 20% odds of a cut. July has like less than 50%. And then not the first cut priced in till December. Let's see the tone from Fed.
Wow. She's right. The first cut was September. It's now priced for December, guys. Goodness gracious. The first time we get a higher probability for a rate cut, look at this, is freaking December. Now, again, oh, I forgot the Fed meets tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. So tomorrow they're going to have that summary of economic projections, which if they signal one, that might be why the market faded the NVIDIA move yesterday. And quite frankly, why we might end up going red today. If the market kind of anticipates S&P getting a red candle right here, that this rate cut is actually going to be guided for December. First of all, Trump's going to lose his mind. But second of all, that means the market's anticipating that NVIDIA now going really red, that when Kevin Warsh gets in, he's not going to have the political capital necessary, even after Jay Powell's kicked out, to be able to cut rates. Which just makes it harder for risk assets to do well, which is why I was wondering why the hell Bitcoin was moving yesterday. Because there's nothing bullish about anything happening right now, other than maybe you could say inflation going up and Bitcoin is the hedge, but that thesis has not played out over the past couple of months now for Bitcoin to be going up. So it was kind of weird to see that spike. But if we're waiting for a December cut, it's going to take us a while to see some of that liquidity enter the ecosystem.
Chair Powell to see how he balances the risk of inflation, because there's also risk, guys, of demand destruction, what that could mean for the consumer and ultimately jobs, which have gone negative as of last month in terms of adding jobs.
We mentioned the rate hike in Australia overnight. One of the governors said inflation was already too high. If we don't raise rates, we're going to see second round effects coming from petrol prices and fuel prices. They'll get into supply chains. That's the view of all of this coming from Australia, at least.
And we're going to get a lot more. We have like every G7 central bank out this week. We're going to have ECB, Bank of Canada, Bank of England. They're all going to be out, Bank of Japan. So we'll see how worried they are about inflation. Europe is actually expected to potentially hike interest rates, actually raise rates
like Australia
this year, like we just got from Australia.
I saw that headline today. I thought I saw the wrong thing, but they are right. Australia hiked their rates today. NVIDIA now 182.40. And, if we get a rate hike, it's going to be a little ugly. Australia raised it by 25 basis points to 4.1%. Obviously, I don't think in this country we can afford to do that, not only for our cost of debt, but also for the fact that, if people are delinquent on credit cards and student loans and auto loans, raising rates is not going to make that easier. But yeah, not the best thing to see here, and hopefully we don't see this across a global central bank, because if central banks across the world start doing it, that literally sets up 2022 again, which I don't think we're in, but it would not be the right thing to see. Robinhood just announced they are investing in Stripe and 11 Labs. Stripe and 11 Labs in the Robinhood Ventures Fund, 2251 on RVI. Again, I still personally am not buying RVI. I really don't believe in any of the private valuations that we're seeing right now. I think all of them are fake. I think all of them are hyped up. And quite frankly, I think if any of those companies were public, they'd be down 50%. So I like that Robinhood's doing this because it's another stream of revenue for them, but I do not trust any public or private valuation. When public markets can barely give you more than 18 times on Meta's earnings, like it's not crazy to say, wait a second, if Meta, one of the most strongest companies in the world, almost 2 trillion, growing 33%, cannot get a higher multiple than 20 times on their forward earnings, you cannot give 50, 70, 80 times on earnings or sales, and quite frankly, sometimes no earnings because these companies aren't profitable in the private markets, to these other companies, even if their potential is greater than Meta, which I don't think Stripe's potential is that much bigger than Meta. Like, Stripe's a good company, but Meta is freaking Meta. So I really don't think those valuations are the best right now. SPY now losing some momentum, 673 on the day. Did I say most strongest? Of course I did. Of course I did. Is Jensen live? Let's see. We will transition as soon as he's live. He is not live yet. He should be on soon. The 10-year, by the way, also not giving us any love. 4.2. I mean, this thing got below 4% a couple of weeks ago, and it came right back, which, once again, is not good for our cost of capital. So we need this thing to kind of go down. The U.S. will not increase rates because of oil. No chance. Well, I would hope so. But it actually, the line of logic goes against that statement, because if oil goes up and inflation goes up, again, being super simplistic here, but theoretically, the Fed could raise rates if they want to combat the rise of inflation. Now, obviously, I think most of us feel oil is not going to stay up for as long as it would have to be in order for the Fed to really think, dude, we have to raise rates here. It's just getting too aggressive. But it's not in the best situation if oil continues to pump. And it gives you a better chance of rates at least not coming down. ESLT, this is an Israeli defense contractor, 45 billion. That's up 10% today. That is up 10% today. ESLT, 967. That goes green as Israel's defense ecosystem continues to get more momentum. I mean, I wouldn't show GTC on stream. I watched 2 streams yesterday, got taken down. Yeah, it was really sad. They usually don't. They messed up Tanner's stream, and I was literally in the chat with you guys on Tanner's stream. But that usually, NVIDIA doesn't usually do that. ASTS getting a 7% move, by the way. Same thing with Rocket Lab, 7%. Space is absolutely taken off. I didn't see any Space headlines, but they are moving. Usually Apple does the copyright, not NVIDIA. So I don't know why they did that. They usually want people to stream their stuff. But that is weird. Alphabet is the biggest company in Israel. Really? That's the biggest company in Israel? ESLT? Well, it's up 10% on the day. The Court of Appeals has turned down Trump's petition to revive his lawsuit over CNN's use of the term big lie. Only other stop would be SCOTUS if he takes it there. I don't know if Trump wants to take that to SCOTUS. SCOTUS already hasn't been the nicest to him on some of this stuff. I don't think he's. I mean, Trump, the tariff stuff didn't go his way with SCOTUS, and now the District Court of Appeals shot down the JPOW investigation. So I don't know if they're going to take something else to the courts. ASTS Really getting some love right here. I don't see any space headline, guys. I don't see any space headlines. If someone else has it, let me see it. But I mean, Rocket Lab confirmed a dedicated Electron launch for Synspective is scheduled this week. I don't know if that's enough to pump it 7%. I don't see anything on ASTS. It's just space moving together today. Data centers in space. That should be pumping Tesla, though, right? I mean, no, it could be. No, it should be pumping ASTS too, if that's a. But Jensen, I mean, look, they spent 5 minutes talking about it. It wasn't like a 30-minute segment where they were like, data centers in space is the next, biggest growth vector in the world. Jensen was like, hey, let me mention this. We're already doing this, but yes, data centers in space are important. And then he kind of moved on from it. This was the announcement right here. It was about a minute, and they talked about Vera Rubin getting into space.
I'll spend very little time on this time. However, we're going to space. We've already been out in space. Thor is radiation approved, and we're in satellites. You do imaging from satellites. In the future, we'll also build data centers in space. Obviously, very complicated to do so. We're working with our partners on a new computer called Vera Rubin Space One, and it's going to go out to space and start data centers out in space. Now, of course, in space, there's no conduction, there's no convection, there's just radiation. And so we have to figure out how to cool these systems out in space. But we've got lots of great.
Even Jensen's acknowledging, you can tell in the tone of his voice, he's like, yeah, this is not going to be the easiest thing to do. Like, we don't know how we're going to cool these things, but we're working on it. So you got Jensen acknowledging, like, yeah, it's important. And then you've got Elon like, this is why you should buy SpaceX, because data centers in space. There's two totally different attitudes towards the concept of data centers in space. But I guess the space stocks, like, yeah, I guess they're moving off that news. I don't see any other headlines. Rocket Lab right there, up 6.5% on the day. Maybe some leaked SpaceX IPO news. Maybe that could be the reason as well in terms of getting some more momentum. Amazon is rolling out 1 hour delivery in hundreds of US cities, around 3 hour delivery in about 2,000 cities and towns. All right. So we had a couple headlines last week of Amazon also continuing to extend those announcements around more deliveries intraday. Amit, any thoughts on Golden Dome? If Trump loses the midterms, he'll never get the funding. I think if Trump loses the midterms, he's going to lose funding on a lot of different ideas that he has, especially around defense. The Golden Dome is very important for Anduril, Palantir, SpaceX, Rocket Lab. Now, I do think there will be the political will in Congress for both sides to come together to build the Golden Dome, but it is one of those initiatives that Trump has been focused on. Yeah, the midterms are going to be important. And right now, with the war going on, it might be too soon to say if American sentiment is totally against the war enough to vote against Trump. Reddit right there up 3%. But I guess we'll know in the coming months what ends up happening. Jensen, not live yet. I think he'll be on in the next 2 minutes. And then we will transition to Mr. Jensen and see what he says. What did other people think of GTC? I mean, for those that watched it, like, were you bored? Were you interested? Do you think it was the same stuff that you heard already? Did you care about the $1 trillion number? Again, for those that are holding on to that number, unfortunately, it looks like that number is through 2.5 years, not in 1 year. And as a result of that, it's just not as exciting as the market thought initially when they announced it. And that's why you saw the stock fade the number. Microsoft now goes red on the day. $3.99 on Microsoft. The ending was horrible. I agree, dude. The ending was weird. Like those robots singing together at a campfire. They weren't even real robots. They were animated. So it was also just like, there's some parts of it that were just like a little confusing. But I think the OpenClaw thing was the most important thing. I mean, look, I haven't experimented yet with OpenClaw, but it is the fastest growing open source project in history, in like the history of humanity. And Jensen said it basically sped up the acceleration of agents in the enterprise by a factor of 10. So it's now 10 times faster, in his opinion, of enterprises adopting agents, which is really important because obviously that leads to more inference, that leads to more token generation, which leads to more compute, which obviously leads to more revenue for NVIDIA. S&P now losing 674 at 672. But I think that was the biggest announcement, the embracing of the new architecture for agents. I don't like OpenClaw though, because I still don't trust giving all my data to something that's open source. And I talked to a few people at the event that were like, we've experimented with it, but if we tell it to go book us a ticket, it has to have access to our credit card to be able to book us like a plane ticket. And just having some open source project have access to your stuff is a little scary. So you would have to kind of do it with building the right guardrails and prompts to be able to make sure that things don't go the wrong way. The Q's losing some momentum. The market is demanding real robots because of the hype and the spend, but the tech ain't there yet. 1000% I agree with what Doug is saying here. The robots are not here yet. They're just not. Like, they're not here, which is why every time we do GTC, Jensen shows a little cute little robot from Disney walking on stage, but like there's that's not going to move the stock, right? Like, the market wants to see real serious use cases with these robots and the ability for billions and billions of them to be sold. And right now we're just not there. Not at the moment. Red Y right there. That's up $10 on the day as that's green. Can you do a short meetup in San Jose like a dinner? I really wish we could. This week is so jam-packed. Next time we will do the Bay Area again, because we did the Bay Area last year. And I know there's a lot of you guys in the Bay, probably even more than in LA itself. So I'll probably be back here soon. Like, I come to the Bay Area a lot. So this week is just going to be really tough because it's jam-packed. But I'll probably be here later in the year, and we can try to do something here. S&P now losing 672. That's an ugly red candle. If we actually go red on the day after being up 1%, it definitely wouldn't be encouraging. Adobe, at least getting some love. That's up 2. But it would be interesting if we actually do go red. Fu, thanks for the super chat. Why were you breathing so hard during the Carp interview? I actually messed up, and I should have edited out my breathing while Carp was talking. I didn't hear it when I was editing it. And then when it went live, I was like, oh shit, I'm breathing so heavy. It was really cold. And so unfortunately, it ended up leading me to breathe a lot, but I didn't realize people could hear it. So yeah, that's my fault. But yeah, we were out in the cold, and that's why I was breathing so hard. PayPal's up 3, SanDisk's up 1. Meta just went green again at 629. Microsoft went red. Nvidia continuing to struggle as that stays red. Updates on Singapore. So again, first of all, again, real quick, Chicago link is live. It's pinned at the top of the chat. The Singapore link will probably be out either tomorrow or Thursday. So we have confirmed the location. We've confirmed the date. The date I can give you guys, June 26th for Singapore, Friday, June 26th. So I will give proper confirmation with an actual link likely in a couple of days, if not tomorrow. June 26th for Singapore. Chicago, that is officially live. There's a link right there. Tickets are $100. Again, we don't make a margin on the tickets. And the reason it's more than 100 is because Chicago has some weird law that you have to charge 9% if you're selling event tickets. I don't know why they have this law, but they have this law. So Eventbrite is taking a little bit more of a fee. But Chicago's live May 9th. And then LA, obviously March 28th. That's in the description. So we have LA, Chicago, and then Singapore, which should be very fun. What do you think about Open Door? Open Door's actually made a move over the past couple days. The CEO keeps tweeting about how their mortgage product is going to freaking like get you a 5% rate, which is better than everything else in the market. And, you know, a lot of people are wondering what's the catch, right? What's actually the catch? And we don't really know what the catch is yet. But, you know, I think that's getting the street excited of like, hey, what if there is some way to be able to make the argument that your mortgage rates can go substantially lower. Here's the update right here on the senior U.S. official who is resigning. We'll get to Jensen in a second, but here's that update that we got about 20 minutes ago.
In this letter this morning addressed to the president saying that he is resigning from his position in opposition to the Iran war.
Let me read a little bit from this letter that he wrote to President Trump. This is Joseph Kent, the director of National Counterterrorism Center at the Department of. He worked.
Jensen's live. All right, we're going to Jensen.
Larger scale. That's surprising for people. And the end markets are really growing. You know, we've reached this point in AI called the inflection of inference. And so we've reached the inference inflection. And so, you know, our growth is accelerating. We would love to see everybody enjoy it.
Well, people got a little trapped by the 500 billion to a trillion. And I like that over 2025, 24/7. What trapped me was that when you said, when we were talking around Michael Dell yesterday, that Jim, do you remember when I told you that ChatGPT could be big? And I said, well, yeah, I do, 10 years ago. And he goes, NemoClaw. He said, NemoClaw, this may be even bigger. I start my morning with NemoClaw. Could you explain to people why this may be what we're thinking about over the next 5 years and not something involving margins over the last 5 minutes?
Well, first of all, I said at the keynote, and I referenced a number I used previously because I want to give everybody a baseline.
We need that.
And so last year I said that about this point that we had $500 billion of high confidence visibility of Blackwell and Rubin. That's it. We obviously, our company sells other things.
Right.
We have, you know, CPUs, we have storage processors, we have networking, and so we have all kinds of things that we sell in addition to that. We have $500 billion worth of visibility. And at this point, with another 21 more months to go to the end of 2027, we already have high confidence visibility of $1 trillion plus of Blackwell and Rubin. Not anything else, just Blackwell and Rubin. And so, you know, we still have 21 more months of new orders coming in. Right. We still have all of the other things that NVIDIA sells. And so I just wanted to give everybody a baseline. The ecosystem needs to know directionally where NVIDIA is going. Now, of course, we plan with the supply chain. We help everybody with their capacity building. We prepare all the technology partners so that we can support $1 trillion worth of Blackwell and Rubin. And so it's an incredible thing.
You bought Grok in December.
Yeah.
What I heard yesterday, maybe my biggest takeaway, was that it's already going to be making you not money, but a huge amount of money, and that's not part of the trillion.
No. Yeah, we started production of Grok version 3. It's a really, really special company, and we're going to add Grok, not to every part. Vera Rubin is so incredible that it's really hard to add value to Vera Rubin. You know, that engine is so incredible. And so, but there's some part of the workload, I think about 25% of the workload, where we could add Grok to it. And so for 25% of the workload, we could increase our opportunity even more. And so
people will be paying for this. One of the reasons why I think is that everyone's so worried about high bandwidth memory and the cost. I don't get me wrong, but this kind of gets around that. The cost is going to be lower, your margins will be higher.
Yeah, we're the only company in the world that now optimizes the entire data center across 3 different types of memories. HBM, and we have some excellent partners there, HBM4 coming. LPDDR5, the world's first low-power memory used in data centers. We invented the whole idea. Everybody's going to use it in the future, but we're the only company in the world that optimizes around that today. And then third, we now have SRAM. So we have 3 different types of memories that we could optimize the workload across. And, you know, NVIDIA is really, really good at extreme co-design, where we optimize across all of these different technologies, building these AI factories.
And then at the same time, you talked about self-driving. Now, self-driving, 50 trillion. And you're going to get your share of self-driving. Yesterday, I heard a dominant share. I did not know you would dominate in that market.
We are going to be very, very large. You know, we've been working on self-driving for about 10 years now. Our strategy is not to build a self-driving car. Our strategy is to build a platform so that everybody can have self-driving cars. We partnered with Mercedes first. We're now on the road.
Put in the chat, do you think NVIDIA actually beats Tesla when it comes to FSD? I'll do a poll. But do you think their partner strategy actually beats Tesla's autonomous FSD approach?
It is the highest rated safety autonomous vehicle in the world today. And so I'm very proud of that. We're now also in BYD, the largest electric car company in the world, Hyundai, Geely, and Nissan. Among the consisting of all the 5 so far, that's 20% of the world's manufactured cars. And yeah, we have GM and Toyota on top of that. And so this is going to be our strategy is to help Uber and help all these companies create a large fleet of autonomous vehicles.
Now let's talk about the kind of robot that I didn't know I'd hear about, the agent robot. I saw yesterday for the first time that I have the opportunity to be smarter, to be able to create, to be able to do things I never thought, because I've got a new buddy with me.
Yeah.
It was viewed as soporific by the crowd. I thought it was explosive.
Yeah, it was incredible. You know, there's a guy named Peter Steinberger.
Yes.
And he created this thing called
He's
OpenClaw.
the first $1 billion whatever.
He created this thing called OpenClaw. It reminds me of back in the old days when Linux first came out, or Kubernetes first came out, or HTML first came out for the internet. These open standards at the time came out modestly. In the case of OpenClaw, literally overnight, in just a few weeks, it was able to achieve the most popular open source project in history, exceeding Linux, exceeding Kubernetes, exceeding every one of these open standards. And the reason for that is it's this simple to download one-line command, and you create for yourself an agent, basically a digital robot. Instead of asking questions like what and how and where, which is what chatbots can answer, you ask it to do build, create, help, organize,
cure.
These are
build a house.
That's right. Build, exactly. These are agents. These are basically an AI that can actually use tools and solve problems. It's
They're
incredible.
the 4th industrial revolution.
That's the dream always, and OpenClaw made it possible. And now it's completely open source.
Well, I think you had to give everybody what they wanted yesterday. I think some took away an incremental notion. I took away an explosive notion and a wonderment notion. That's why I'm glad you're going to stay with me, because we're going to talk a little bit more about not earnings per share, but a new world.
Terrific.
A new world that NVIDIA is creating. And not just the world that made it so that you have so many millionaires.
You get to see it right here at GTC.
Well, I'm very excited. I know one last thing I do want to just ask, are we still doing dirty, dangerous, and dull robots, so I don't have to do them?
You're going to do what?
The robots, they do dirty, dangerous, and dull things.
Well, they do things that either we can't do, they do things that we don't want to do, and they can do things all the time.
Well, then are they willing to clean toilets at Denny's?
Nobody could clean toilets at Denny's better than I can, but that's, you know, that's a gift.
Has there ever been a job that you were willing to do?
Everybody's good at something. That's what I was good at.
So, I mean, were you happy with yesterday?
Yeah. I'm proud of all the ecosystem partners here. I'm proud of all the announcements that we made. We revolutionized AI factories again, introduced a level of performance and energy efficiency by another 10x. And then if you add Grok to that, 35 times. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that all of these ecosystem partners here are helping to build this future industrial revolution. The number of companies that are here is incredible. Every single industry is represented, from healthcare to transportation to retail to manufacturing, right? It's just everybody's here.
Everyone
large companies,
is a client
smart. Yeah, it's
of
incredible.
Jensen Huang. We're going to have more with you, much more with you. Jensen's the co-founder and CEO of NVIDIA. You have to turn on Mad Money tonight to find out more, but it was explosive, not incremental, and that's why you must watch. Thank you, Jensen.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, our thanks to you. We'll be sure to tune.
Okay. Don't think we got anything from that interview that we didn't already know. But yeah, NVIDIA tried to make a little bit of a move, couldn't really make any big of a move right there. And again, the market, you know, at this, NVIDIA is a $4.5 trillion company. At this point, the market just needs really, really, really big updates. And NVIDIA, you know, they did the best they could yesterday. They announced a ton of stuff that was really important. It just wasn't that big market moving event, which is okay. The earnings should be enough. Hopefully time plays out and the earnings are enough to get it to go forward. And again, even if you don't own NVIDIA, I think for the market to break out, this is my belief. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think NVIDIA needs to see that 210, 220 level for the market to get that massive breakout, which then causes the derivative effect of all these other companies going up 20, 30%. Because NVIDIA is 8% of the S&P 500. I think if NVIDIA stays flat, it's going to be really tough for a lot of these companies that are associated with NVIDIA to also go up. And, maybe it's possible that happens, but I think at this point, you're just going to have to see the market change its tune on believing the type of growth NVIDIA is going to put up. And, these GTC events are important, but they're not enough to get the market to change its macro tune yet. And hopefully we'll see if that does happen. Rocket Lab and ASTS still catching some love, as those are green, up 6-7% on the day. I don't know why they're trending, for those that are asking. The only thing I can say is the data center and space stuff that NVIDIA talked about yesterday, but that's such a bad reason for all of the space names to be pumping the way they are. So I feel like someone knows something. Maybe we're going to get a headline after hours. Maybe some updates on the SpaceX IPO will be coming out. But they are green. What's more interesting is you guys in the chat, it's only 52-48 on who wins FSD if you have to pick one between NVIDIA and Tesla, which I find a little concerning, because my pick, unequivocally, without a doubt in my mind, and I could be wrong, is Tesla. I mean, this is a no-brainer that Tesla is going to win this market. Now, I'm sympathetic to the argument that obviously NVIDIA is taking a different approach. They're doing partnerships, and the tech eventually will be commoditized because all the miles will be trained on the same data. That's fair. I just personally experience the Tesla every day, and it's the best AI product I've ever experienced. Now, my lack of experience on the BYD or Mercedes maybe is why I'm ignorant to the fact that NVIDIA is actually going to come out with some really good robotaxi stuff. But I think it's Tesla that's going to win this. Not going to say Tesla's going to get the whole market, but just when it comes to the best product, I think Tesla is going to win. The fact that 50% of you think differently is interesting. It means that NVIDIA's done a decent job of convincing people that automotive might be a massive sector for them outside of data center revenue. That, this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. If NVIDIA is able to capture even a small percentage of that, that could also be incremental revenue for NVIDIA. Google right there is also green on the day. 307.50, as that's getting some love. Now, having said that, the reason I'm not buying Tesla stock right here is because, again, I'm buying NVIDIA over Tesla because the valuation on Tesla is just hard to stomach. It is. If you're buying Tesla, you have to be able to say you don't care about the valuation because you see the future, which is totally fine. But the product of FSD is just unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable. But, there are legitimate concerns of how many vehicles are going to be on the road. Will everyone just give up their car to be able to use it? When is Tesla going to be able to expand? I mean, a lot of questions that allow NVIDIA, while Tesla's taking their sweet time to make this thing become mainstream, to fill in the gap. And, if they fill in the gap with their partners, that could really help. Nebius getting hit pretty hard today, down 11.37% on that dilution. 115 down about $14. CoreWeave down 2%. IREN is also down 2.8%. So I met up with ticker symbol U yesterday, and we were talking. He's another big tech channel. A lot of you guys probably know him. He was long NVIDIA since like 2016. And I asked him, out of the three neoclouds, which one do you like the most? And he said IREN. And I said, why? And he said IREN has the most contracted data center capacity at, what is it, like 4.5 gigawatts? I think it's around 4 gigawatts or something, that they can actually rent out. And he says a big deal is eventually going to happen for IREN. He doesn't know when, but he thinks the reason they're raising the $6 billion ATM is because they're going to get a massive deal because they have the most capacity. So I didn't expect him to say that, but IREN is the one that he likes out of all of them. By the way, we will be having a guest join in person in the next couple of minutes. And the only hint I'll give about the guest is that he is definitely a big fan of CoreWeave when it comes to the three neoclouds. So he'll be on soon, and we'll get his thoughts on what happened at GT. Hear from Stacy. He's from Bernstein, and get his thoughts on what he thought Jensen said over the past couple of days.
Kind of proves that they probably can dominate inference to the same degree that they're dominating training. In inference, what really matters is cost per token. This is your usage. Right. And I mean, he showed it. He's been showing it, by the way. This is not new, but they clearly have the lowest cost per token, like by a country mile. I think that's only getting better, especially as they integrate some of these new architectures from Grok and everything else. And my hope is that as this becomes more and more obvious, that this view that they actually can be and are going to be an inference winner, I hope that can dominate. Maybe that's part of what can help getting the stock to work at some point. But I was really happy with what I heard.
You are. To follow up on that, then, if they are going to dominate, does that actually make you think differently about AMD or about some of the other efforts in terms of custom ASICs that are out there?
Well, it's funny. He talked yesterday about that they're a platform company, and he's really right. And you look at everything that they're delivering on the silicon side, GPUs and CPUs and LPUs and DPUs and networking and storage and all this stuff. And on the software side as well, as everything is building up. And I mean, I have the same reaction every time. It's like, how can anybody else really hope to definitively compete with this? I think it's very difficult. And I think my views on that have really changed, especially in the GPU space. I think they've got a very big moat. And I think they have been, and I think will continue to be very, very difficult to compete with. It is still their game to lose.
All right, folks, let's bring on another semiconductor analyst, my favorite semiconductor analyst, for the first time in person. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Mr. Jose.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
You know what he said yesterday? I said, oh, so you can come down at around like 10:40. He was like, just send me the link. I was like, bro, you're in person. I'm not going to send you the link. We need you to be here in freaking person.
I mean, I didn't know if you had room for me. That's it.
See, well,
I didn't know who else was in the room.
He's funny. He's funny. He's trying to be funny. Dude, what's up?
It's pretty good. I mean, I'm having fun here at GTC. Crazy. I mean, I get to geek out at all this shit.
This is your first GTC, right?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so this is my first GTC as well. Okay, so let's talk about the announcements that we heard today. I'll just give you the floor. Broadly, what did you think about what NVIDIA put out yesterday?
I mean, I thought it was amazing. As a long-term investor, there were three things that I think everyone should know. The first thing was the $1 trillion number they gave us. And
yes,
it seems a bit weird because it was based on 3 years. So they added an extra year and they added an extra $500 billion. So that pretty much means for their calendar year of 2027, they expect revenue of about $500 billion. Now, I think that tells us two stories. The first story it tells us is that Jensen expects next year to be a growth year, which I think is crucial because one of the biggest bearish case in the AI market right now was that 2026 was the end of CapEx, right? 2026 was the year that Amazon was going to go negative free cash flow. So how can they invest more in AI chips? 2026 was the year where everybody was spending crazy money. There's no way that's going to continue. So I think Jensen giving us that $500 billion just in 2027 alone shows that that is not the case, right? So I think that eliminates that bearish sentiment. The second thing is the average Wall Street, I think, expected about $480 billion. So that's a $20 billion, and that's Jensen being conservative on that number, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
because that's only Blackwell and Bear Rubin.
Yeah, and he's known to be sandbagging the numbers right now, right? He sandbagged the performance of Blackwell. He sandbagged. They beat every quarter, right? For I think the past 12, 13 quarters, they demolished analyst expectations. So I think those were the two things. Is one, that was a conservative number, and it still is higher than the street. And the second thing, which I think is more crucial, is that it ends that AI thesis, at least for the 2027 year, that this is not the thing. So that was, I think, the first crucial thing. I don't know if you want to.
To touch on this, the issue was, I think people, including myself, I don't know if you interpreted, was $1 trillion in 2027.
Yeah. So
instead of through 2020s, and that's where the whole energy of the room kind of died down for a second.
Yeah. I didn't think it was going to be 3 years. I thought it was going to be 2 years. Obviously, $1 trillion in 2 years, or obviously in 1 year, would be crazy. But that type, I mean, the capacity that you need to build of not just for Jensen, but right, the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
That is completely $1 trillion. To get $1 trillion is insane. But yeah, obviously $1 trillion, I think, would have been crazy.
Because if it was $1 trillion in 1 year.
It's trading at a forward price to sales ratio of 4, right? It's crazy because right now, what, market cap of 4? Yeah. But even if we go $500 billion, that's not even a price to sales ratio of 10.
Yeah.
Which is still, in my opinion, pretty cheap. And then forward PEs is even lower because we know analysts aren't expecting as much.
Right.
So that was the first thing, right? So it's good to get a number from management, but then you have to understand, is this number viable? Like, what's driving this? What is driving this? And I think that's the second crucial thing. And I do think AI agents is that. They released NemoClaw, right? NemoClaw yesterday, which is kind of just like a safety net for OpenClaw. And OpenClaw is going crazy. But if you are an OpenClaw, the only people that are using OpenClaw are just like the tinkerers, the people that know how to use this. What NVIDIA wanted to do is like, hey, the amount of compute you're using with this is insane, but it has a lot of hurdles. It's one, unsafe, right? There's safety issues. The second thing, it's hard to play around with. Let's solve both these issues. So maybe your typical Jose can end up using it. Now your enterprise company doesn't have to worry about the safety. Now, as an enterprise, I can give all my employees the ability to use OpenClaw, and now the token usage is going to increase dramatically.
Right.
And that's what NemoClaw is, right? It's the ability to make it safe for the enterprise world. Now you're going to have vast amount of engineers or whoever using some form of OpenClaw solution, which is going to increase that demand of compute. And I do believe that alone is enough to drive this type of revenue and this type of compute constraint that we're in right now. So many people are not, I don't know, they're not excited about the NemoClaw. I think that was one of the biggest announcements outside.
Okay, we're back. We're back. We're on the hotspot, folks. The hotel Wi-Fi. The hotel Wi-Fi.
I blame Tanner too.
Was not enough to handle the amazing analysis coming from Jose. Unfortunately, we're on the hotspot. We're on the hotspot.
So I don't know where we were at. We were definitely at the oh my god, what the heck?
We were at
Fidelity's calling. My account exposed. Margin call. What's up?
Dude, you know what? Okay, we know Jose definitely went quadruple leverage on NVIDIA last night. Literally, Fidelity just called him. It's actually hilarious.
Yeah, man.
Too much shit is happening right now. Okay, yeah. When people say margin calling, he's getting it. I'm sorry, guys. The hotel is the hotel, but we have the iPhone Wi-Fi. Anyway, you probably should answer that margin call though, because if video goes down $2, Jose loses $1 million. Nemotron. Okay, so was that the only big announcement? Because everything else was kind of
I mean, I think the other big announcement was the LPX, that Grok integration.
Yes.
So we knew something was coming because they made the acqui-hire in December, I believe. And we didn't know how soon it was going to happen. And I actually got to meet like one of the top management of Grok walking down the street, which was pretty cool. And he told me how quickly this event happened. That guy emailed Jensen, and in 3 weeks, Jensen like interviewed everybody, looked at everything, and kind of like did the deal in like 3 weeks of the acqui-hire. And in 3 months, they kind of already had a chip making.
Wow.
And that just shows how quick NVIDIA is. It's like a startup company. It moves super, super quick. But I think this opens up the new opportunity for the premium tier of AI. And they showed a pretty cool slide. Is data centers are going to break down their workloads in different types of tiers. Some people are only going to be using AI that only needs like low tiers. Then there's going to be the medium tier. There's going to be the ultra premium tiers. The ultra premium are going to be like your software engineers, your deep researchers. But Jensen actually believes that's a huge market for them. And this is going to be one of the reasons that allows them to go there.
And Grok is going to help with the inference training.
Yes. Yeah. So Grok and so NVIDIA and Grok, now it's all Grok. But they're going to make like this super rack. And if you want to use super premium AI, you're going to need that super rack. And you're going to see massive revenue growth. And I think that alone, that's like, again, software engineering video is going to be crucial for that. And I think the market is not appreciating that one as well. So the Clawness and the Grok were the two.
Those were the two things.
Yes,
the new Grok LPU architecture and OpenClaw. Outside of that, and do you think that's kind of why the market's having a muted reaction outside of like the macro and all that stuff? It's like it just wasn't enough, even though it's not NVIDIA's fault. You know.
Yeah, I think unfortunately now NVIDIA, they do a GTC every 6 months, right? Yes. I think that GTDC in October, right? So it's like, how much more can you develop in 6 months, right? So I think it has created where the market wants more, but it's like in 6 months I already increased by $500 billion in revenue,
right?
Or at least another year of revenue growth for one more. And in 6 months I added a whole new chip. Companies aren't even doing this in like 2 years, and I'm doing all this in 6 months. So I just don't think it's appreciated. It's expected. It's like if you're the A+ student, you're expected to do A+ grades. And I don't know if that's a fault, but I do think it's sad. It's like too much expectations, and no matter what they would have said, the market is punishing it.
Before we talk about the neoclouds, because we got some updates on that this morning, Jensen once again talked about physical AI with self-driving and robotics. Let's talk about self-driving. Do you think there's a world where NVIDIA beats Tesla when it comes to magnifying the impact of robotaxis worldwide?
I think indirectly, yes. Obviously, NVIDIA is not doing it as a direct player. It's doing through its customers. I think there is an opportunity for them. I think they have a lot of information. I think they have a lot of compute. I think they have a lot of great engineers. And they're doing it in a partner way, right, where other players are also coming in to work with them. So I think there's plenty of room for everybody. I think Tesla is still going to be super strong. They already have this massive ecosystem. But I wouldn't put NVIDIA's customers out of the race because of the NVIDIA technology.
And you think the Cosmos platform for training could be similar to FSD's proprietary data moat, which is like what they use to kind of build their models, in a way where a stop sign becomes a stop sign and it doesn't become special no matter what car is looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely the thing. I would love to try out. I know NVIDIA has the Mercedes right now. I would love to try it out. And obviously we both done FSD. So I would love to see how big the difference is, because you can tell, right? You can tell if there's a huge gap in difference in performance. So I would love to try it out before I give like how close or how close they are, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. That's the only thing I would say.
Okay, let's talk about the neoclouds, because those have got a lot of attention. By the way, guys, Jose on YouTube is right there in the chat, so please make sure to follow his YouTube. He covers pretty much all of the semiconductor stocks on a daily basis, so definitely subscribe to him there. So first of all, let's talk about Nebius. I got a lot of love yesterday. You and I have been seeing their billboards all over the place, down about 11% right here on raising about $4 billion in convertible notes. As a neocloud investor, do you think this is just part of the game, or how should investors be thinking of dilution?
100% part of the game. 100%. If you need to build these massive data centers, and I think another thing that we saw yesterday is Jensen telling us about agentic AI and all these different solutions. That's what you want to hear as a neocloud player, right? You want to hear AI innovation continuing, because if AI innovation continues, you're going to have more demand than supply. And if you have more demand than supply, you get the strength of better pricing, of longer pricing, of better contracts, a better financing deal, because you're at this shortage. So it helps you out. Unfortunately, to be able to accelerate that, you need to go on the purchasing spree of GPUs.
Correct.
And GPUs are crazy expensive.
Which is why NVIDIA is investing in these guys, because eventually that money is going to come back to them.
Yes. Right? So for them, they want to make sure these stay alive, because just like at the end of the day, NVIDIA doesn't want there to be one AI company, right? They don't want just OpenAI to be the winner. They want Anthropic to win. They want thinking machines to win. They want XAI to win, because then they push each other to be better and better and better. And that drives innovation. The same thing with the neoclouds. You don't just want Microsoft and Google to be the only cloud players, because then they're not really going to innovate. They're not really going to push forward for more investment. But if you have multiple players surviving this ecosystem, you have to watch out your back for all of these. And he creates this competitive landscape where you need to continue to invest to be the better player. I think Jensen is crazy smart to do that, to create kind of this competitive landscape. And he kind of rewards those that compete in the space.
Okay, so your pick still is CoreWeave. We were talking about it yesterday. And the debate has popped up again because Nebius got this meta deal. Why CoreWeave over Nebius?
So again, I like CoreWeave more than Nebius, but I like the whole ecosystem. So I own both CoreWeave and Nebius. To me, it's just, I think Jensen truly appreciates CoreWeave from the beginning, and obviously we've seen similar investments into Nebius, so I think that's great. But to CoreWeave, my biggest thing is they already have about 860 megawatts of active power. In one quarter, in this past quarter, they added 240 megawatts of active power. That's actual GPUs that are running and making revenue. To put in perspective, in one quarter, they added enough active power than Nebius has in the whole year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it just shows the size of it, the big difference. The Enco, right, at least on if you're a Nebius shareholder, you could be exciting that the Enco, they both have about, I think, 3 gigawatts of contracted power by, I think, the end of this year. So in the Enco, it could be different in 2020, by the end of 2026. But to be able to get to that amount of active power, the amount of GPU spending that you're going to need to do is crazy. So you're either going to do these dilutions that, or whatever's happening here, dilution, some other form of long-term raise debt. So CoreWeave looks bad, but that's because they did it already. They already did a lot of this, and they're going to do even more. All the other players are going to start to look.
That's why their debt to equity ratio is 3x, right?
Yes, and luckily for Nebius, since CoreWeave has already done it and the market is already there, CoreWeave and Nebius and all these other players can get better pricing on some of the things, so it might not be as bad of a debt compared to kind of like your CoreWeave, but it still has to grow pretty strong. And if you're ahead in kind of the active power, I like it. But like I mentioned, I really do own on Nebius as well.
Okay, so your perspective on the neoclouds is that they're going to be necessary,
100%.
but dealing with the dilution is part of the game if you're going to be investing in these games. The other thing that NVIDIA announced at GTC that I also thought was really interesting is this reinforcement of the CUDA moat. I mean, Jensen spent a good 30 minutes talking about that. A lot of people already know about how important CUDA is. Do you think there's a world in which that moat gets a little weaker as more open source models come into fruition and you have different companies sort of embracing those open source models? Or do developer there was this controversy around Google TPUs kind of potentially challenging CUDA, just in terms of how developers are building on that stack? Or do you think that library of software and the moat around it that has kept NVIDIA as the #1 application for developers is going to stay in place in the humanoid robotics world, the self-driving world, et cetera?
I think it's going to keep in place. And I think open source models, if you're an open source model, you're going to call NVIDIA and you're going to call the whatever chip developer, and you're going to say, look, this is how I'm going to be making this model. You should work on a way to make sure that on your hardware, this is how it runs optimized.
Yeah.
Now, so even if it's an open source model, if it's a closed model, it's whatever engineer can kind of like look at that model or team, look at that model and make it where this is the optimal chip to use it. And I think NVIDIA is going to continue to win there. Obviously, I think other players will do the same, but and NVIDIA, I mean, they announced like a new update to their models every so often, a new update to their libraries every so often, a new update to CUDA every so often. So I think that will continue no matter if it's open, if it's closed, or whatever, whatever market, being large language models, being robotics, being automotive space. But one thing I would say, this GTC conference has made me a little bit more bearish on robotics.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay. Before you continue, guys, if you have any questions for Jose on specific semiconductor stocks, put in the chat. We'll be here for like another 10 minutes. So put those in the chat and we'll rapid fire them. But yeah, why more bearish on robotics?
So I feel like,
because that stupid video at the end, because that shit, that definitely made me bearish about robotics.
No. So I think the physical AI is going to be mainly driven by automotive. And I think automotive is going to go well. I think humanoid robotics, though, is going to take a little longer than expected. Yesterday, I went to 2 sessions. One of the sessions, they had the VP of AI software from Tesla.
Oh, I was there too. Yeah, yeah.
And the other one was Nebius had something else with some robotics companies. And one of the things that they both mentioned is humanoid robotics is a bazillion times harder than an automotive car.
Obviously, right?
And it's because it's so different, right? A human car, once you're not supposed to interact with anything. If you interact with anything, it means you crashed, and that's bad.
Yeah.
A robot needs to interact with every different type of technology. And just to understand a water bottle from something else, from a glass bottle, a plastic bottle from a glass bottle, how much pressure I need to put on this, how much pressure I need to put on that. What type of fingers do I have? What type of claw do I, how much I weigh, everything. There's so much interaction with so many physical products that even running on simulation, one of the things that they actually mention, all these engineers that talked about it, is simulations only go so far. And you can only run so many real world data points at one time. You only have so many prototype robots running the same thing. So I actually think robotics will happen, obviously, but I don't think it's going to happen this year or next year for anything outside of maybe simple task. But for like the consumer world or for my personal cooking chef, which I'm extremely sad about, I don't think I'm getting that anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I really do love the robotics thesis. I'm invested in a couple of them privately, but it's going to take time. Like, and even the ones that I'm probably invested in, they haven't put out some major update to the world of like, hey guys, we made a major breakthrough. It's like very incremental little videos they're putting out because it's hard. Like, you got to give them time to have it play out. So that means that S-curve of billions of chips that Jensen thinks he can sell into the robots, that's probably going to be a decade away. You're saying?
At least 5 years. Decade, I think I think I'm hoping a decade. I have my personal shop. That's if not, I'm going to be emailing NVIDIA and everybody else every day till I have one. I think a decade is extremely conservative. I think 5 years is when at least 5 years is maybe where I'm looking at, 3 to 5.
Okay. Let's do some rapid fire. Again, Jose's Twitter. Please make sure to follow him there, and his YouTube, putting it in the chat. And you guys can stay updated on all of his stuff when it comes to the semiconductor world. Optics, Light, Coherent, AAOI, a lot of these retail heavy names, $3-4 billion market cap companies. 2 of them just got into the S&P. They're pushing 40-50 billion. Are these real, or how are you thinking of the optics place?
I mean, the constraint is definitely very real. I mean, 100% real. And I think because of that constraint, I don't think it should be a either or market where I know some people are saying the end of copper. I think Jensen kind of threw that out again yesterday where he's like, no, I'm going to make sure I'm buying a lot of copper and a lot of optics. The great thing for optics is usually these are smaller companies. So for them, the revenue growth would be higher than the copper player since the copper has already this massive capacity. So I think that's the bullish case there. I'll be honest, I don't know much of the optics plays to kind of mention anything outside of just the constraint itself, right? So the constraints are real.
Would you think of investing in do you philosophically think of investing in the supply chain bottlenecks in the ecosystem of AI for NVIDIA's GPUs as a more attractive value proposition than NVIDIA itself?
Yes, definitely, 100%. And I think, well, it comes with the risk, right? So NVIDIA can obviously find other players in the space or create other players or innovate. So that's the risk behind it, but the opportunity is massive. For me, I think one of the supply constraints that I really like is the compute itself. And that's why I invest in Nebius and in CoreWeave, in some of the other players as well. So I think compute is one. Memory is another. And I think that market is good, but I'm not looking in memory.
That was my next question. Micron, SanDisk, how are you thinking of those?
I think the memory constraint is going to continue, right? Especially with this type of demand. But I'd rather look at it in other avenues. I have other stocks in the memory space like Form Factor, Simo, Silicon Motion, that I believe can kind of move a little bit with the memory market, and most of the market isn't paying attention to it. I think everybody just looks at Micron, just looks at SK Hynix, and I think there's different levels. So I don't think investing in the bottlenecks is bad. I just think you understand that when you invest in bottlenecks, that's both the bullish and the bearish thesis. The bullish thesis is you're constrained, so you're going to be able to have higher margins. The bearish thesis is if that's your only strength, you have to understand when that market shifts. And if that market shifts, the market is going to react really quickly to the stock price. So I think it's all about risk to reward ratio and how much risk you're willing to add to your portfolio with the constraint space. And you can't have weak hands. Micron, for example, they had rumors that they weren't part of the HBM4 of NVIDIA. The stock dropped to like 380, 390, I think, in the past month or so, and now look back at it at 460.
It's an all-time high.
Yeah, so it's like if you get scared because you're just there for a random thesis that you didn't really have the true conviction for, you're most likely going to sell out at 370 because you think it's going lower. But the ones that understand the ecosystem and believe that the convictions that they have, I'm pretty sure they ride the wave.
What do you think about Iran in relationship to the other neoclouds?
I mean, the power is there, and like constraint, that is crucial for constraint. I personally do enjoy more your CoreWeave and Nebius at the moment.
Did we sleep in the same bed last night? No, we did not. Can you confirm?
Confirm, yeah. Confirm, 100%.
I need you to confirm this one. TSM, how do you feel about this as one of the semiconductor players?
I always talk about this, and I get a lot of hate for it. TSM, I think, I'd rather just invest in like overall semiconductor ETF. I think last year was one of the only years TSM outperformed the whole semiconductor market. But I think if you look at it in the past 10 years or plus or more than that, TSM either performs similar to a semiconductor ETF or under. Right. So when I'm looking for investments, I don't just want to be able to just perform equally to the market. I want to completely outperform and outperform more than 1 year. So it's great. I would never be bearish in it. I just would sleep better with my own money. If I had to put a TSM, I would just rather put it in an ETF instead.
You're not really a price target guy, but do you have one on a CoreWeave or Nebius?
On Core, I just see them both being $100 billion market opportunities. So that's how I see it. Do I see them growing dramatically? Yes. And it's not a price target because I feel for me the price target would, if it hits it, I sell right away or something like that. But I do believe both can be $100 billion just on cloud solutions. Obviously, Nebius has other opportunities with AV Ride and Toloka and all that stuff. Yes, but as just a cloud player, I think they're $100 billion businesses in the current ecosystem that we're in. If the ecosystem shifts and demand goes crazy low, then that's not where I would see them.
Navitas, thoughts on them post GTC?
Haven't seen too much about power. I have a few sessions that I'm going to be checking out today and tomorrow on power. So I want to understand more about kind of like the power constraint. Maybe after that, I can have a little bit more there.
Data centers in space. Even Jensen, the way he talked about it yesterday, was very nonchalant. Do you think this is something people should actually care about?
I was actually surprised that they actually released the product.
Yeah.
That to me shows that for them to be doing that, it shows that there's some truth to it. How much truth and how long, that's different, right? Because, but I was surprised that they actually had, because to make a chip to be able to go reliably into space is a whole different ballgame. And for him to have taken the time to have a research team do that and design that, it showcased that he believes there's some truth to it. Maybe not right now, but at least some truth that he wants to get more information and more data.
This one here, I don't know if you fully have an answer to this, but thank you for the super chat. Could there be a helium shortage because of the attack in Qatar? People say the next shortage of AI play is helium, which is needed to produce chips.
So, I mean, this is crazy. To understand this type of supply chain, even someone like me who researches chips all day long, like I still don't even know like the materials and the supply chain there. So I couldn't tell you. But obviously something like that would be more reactive to any form of tensions and more into this. I don't think it would create too much. And a lot of these companies already have a risk portfolio management where they kind of reserve some form of inventory for the long term. So if that shortage is there, it has to be something that lasts past a lot of the banks of storage that they have in certain of these materials.
Right. All right. Last question for you, Jose. And again, thank you for joining. I'm putting his Twitter and YouTube in the chat so people can subscribe. The market is still not giving NVIDIA any meaningful momentum. Mm-hmm. Forget post GTC, post earnings. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's an Iran war, and you're not super big macro guy, but do you think an AI bubble and concerns around it, Anthropic at 400 billion, OpenAI at 800 billion, a lot of the investing kind of being circular, all those sort of basic arguments, do you think any of those continue to have merit as we hear these new updates on growth, or do you think the market should continue to discount them in case it's a dot-com bubble?
I think it's good to have risk, to understand the risk and to kind of price some form of risk. I think you're pricing a complete destruction right now. I think the market is not just pricing a little bit of overvaluation. I mean, a forward PE ratio on NVIDIA of 21, that doesn't scream bubble to me. Right. A lot of these, Microsoft at 22, 23, Amazon below 30s, Meta, like that doesn't scream bubble to me. It tells me that the market just doesn't know what's going to happen next year or 2 years from now. So if you are an AI investor, I think it's fun, because if you're also tinkering with AI, I think you have a better vision of what's ahead. And if you have that vision, I think it grabs your conviction and makes sure that you don't have the weekend. So eventually the market is going to wake up. I don't know if that's next quarter. I don't know if that's next earnings. If that's 2-3 earnings from now, the market is eventually going to wake up. And I think as AI investors, being your neo clouds, if the constraints are still there, you're going to be pretty damn happy.
I do have to ask about AMD, because we can't leave without giving any love to it. Did anything at this conference make you bearish on AMD's growth potential, in inference in particular?
For me, no, because for me, my bullish thesis on AMD was never it was going to catch up to NVIDIA. It was never going to be that next NVIDIA. My overall bullish thesis for AMD has been there's not enough compute, so there's room for other players to grow in this space based to that constraint, right? Kind of that constraint issue, right? I mean, with memory, you see all these players winning. I don't think you're going to win like NVIDIA wins, but I think you have the opportunity to grow more revenue than you made last year and the year before. And if you're trading at a valuation, then that's the opportunity as an investor, right? So to me, it's NVIDIA is still the GOAT. Compute is still constrained. AMD is not the next NVIDIA, but AMD will be able to see revenue growth because of the compute constraint that we are seeing.
All right. I love it. Jose, thank you for joining again, guys. Sorry it messed up 20 minutes ago. The Wi-Fi was being weird in the morning, but then it got fixed before I went live, and then I guess they couldn't handle Jose's analysis. So,
all right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. And if we hear something cool, maybe I'll be in tomorrow as well.
Yeah, we'll get Jose at one of the meetups, because apparently for the New York meetup, given he lives 30 minutes away, he forgot there was a New York. Like, I get it. You have a kid, you have the wife.
It was something with the wife or the kid. That's who I'm blaming.
He's literally 30 minutes away. So we will get him to a future meetup so you guys can meet him as well.
I appreciate it, man. And take care, everybody.
Yeah, bro. See you, man.
See you in a bit.
Thank you, everybody. That is it for today. We'll be back tomorrow on the Market Open. I'm not doing Technical Tuesday. Jason will be doing it with Steve. And so I will see you guys tomorrow on the Market Open. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.